In the blood-soaked hills of revolutionary Mexico, a sacred Aztec idol worth more than gold has vanished, and whoever controls it controls an army of 10,000 warriors. But this isn't just about power. It's about survival, a dying rebellion, a ruthless industrialist, and one impossible gunslinger caught in the middle of the deadliest treasure hunt the frontier has ever seen. Welcome to a story of betrayal, bullets, and impossible odds. If you're ready for 2 hours of pure chaos, settle in. And when this is over, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this wild ride travels. Let's begin. The Mexican sun beat down mercilessly on the canyon floor, turning dust into powder and stone into furnace walls. The air shimmered with heat and the acrid stench of gunpowder. Somewhere in the distance, vultures circled, patient, knowing. General Mateo Salazar knelt in the shadow of a crumbling adobe wall, pressing a bloodied cloth against the gash across his ribs. His breathing came in sharp, ragged bursts. Around him, the remnants of his revolutionary force huddled behind whatever cover they could find. Overturned wagons, dead horses, shattered barrels. 50 men had followed him into this canyon. 17 remained. "General," whispered Lieutenant Vargas, crouched beside him. The young officer's face was smeared with dirt and dried blood. "The Imperials have the North Ridge. They're moving artillery into position." Salazar closed his eyes. Artillery. Of course they were. The Empire didn't take chances anymore, not after the rebels had scored 3 consecutive victories in the southern provinces. This was meant to be a message, complete annihilation. "How long?" Salazar asked. 20 minutes. Maybe less. 20 minutes to live. 20 minutes before cannon fire turned this canyon into a tomb. Salazar had faced death before. Every revolutionary did. But this felt different. This felt final. The rebellion wasn't just losing a battle. It was bleeding out. The northern supply lines had collapsed. The coastal cities had surrendered. The European weapons they'd been promised never arrived. And now, trapped in this God's-forsaken canyon, the last organized resistance force in the entire region was about to be wiped from existence. Unless Salazar's fingers found the folded paper in his jacket pocket. The edges were worn, the ink smudged from sweat and handling. He'd carried it for 3 weeks, ever since the merchant in Veracruz had pressed it into his palm with a knowing smile. "If you ever need a miracle," the merchant had said, "find this man." The paper contained a single name and a reputation that bordered on legend. Lucas Glory Hale. Stories about Hale circulated through cantinas and army camps like wildfire. Some said he'd robbed the Sonora Express 3 times in 1 month and returned the money each time just to prove he could. Others claimed he'd walked into a Federales garrison, stolen the governor's prize stallion, and rode out whistling a folk song while bullets pinged off the walls around him. There were darker stories, too. Stories about bodies left in alleys, about corrupt officials found swinging from railroad bridges, about a man who could read a room like a card sharp reads a deck, always 3 moves ahead, always walking away clean. But the story that mattered most to Salazar was simpler. Lucas Hale took impossible jobs and made them possible, for a price. "Vargas," Salazar said quietly, "send Rodriguez through the South Passage. Tell him to find the American." Vargas's eyes widened. "General, we don't have time. We don't have a choice." Salazar pushed himself upright, wincing as pain lanced through his side. "The idol, Lieutenant. It's our only chance." The idol. Even wounded, even surrounded, the thought of it sent electricity through Salazar's veins. The sacred jaguar of Tenochtitlan, an artifact so old it predated the Spanish conquest, so revered that entire Pueblo communities considered it divine. The legend said it had been blessed by the last Aztec emperor before the fall of the capital, imbued with the power to unite the scattered tribes under one banner. Superstition? Maybe. But Salazar had seen the effect it had on people. 3 years ago, during a negotiation with Pueblo elders, just the mention of the idol had brought tears to their eyes. They spoke of it in hushed, reverent tones, a symbol of resistance, of identity, of a world that existed before the empire crushed it beneath its boots. If the rebellion could recover the idol, if they could present it to the Pueblo confederations, 10,000 warriors. Maybe more. Enough to turn the tide. Enough to transform this dying revolution into a fighting chance. The problem was simple and devastating. The idol had been stolen. 2 months ago, it had been in the hands of a minor warlord named Ochoa, who'd planned to use it to consolidate his own power in the Eastern Territories. But before he could make his move, the idol vanished, taken in a midnight raid by persons unknown. Since then, it had become the most sought-after prize in northern Mexico. Everyone wanted it: soldiers, bandits, businessmen, even the church. And now it was out there somewhere, passing from hand to hand like a cursed poker chip in the deadliest game the frontier had ever seen. "General!" a voice called from the western barricade. "They're advancing!" Salazar looked up. Through the gaps in the ruined wall, he could see Imperial soldiers moving down the ridge in tight formation, their blue uniforms stark against the brown earth. Officers shouted commands. Rifle barrels glinted in the sun. 15 minutes now, maybe less. Salazar turned to Vargas. "Send Rodriguez, now!" The lieutenant hesitated, then nodded and scrambled away, calling for the scout. Salazar slumped back against the wall, pressing the cloth harder against his wound. Around him, his men checked ammunition, whispered prayers, said goodbye to photographs of wives and children they'd never see again. This was it. The end of the line. Unless one unpredictable American gunslinger could pull off the impossible. The Ghost in the Cantina. Rodriguez found Lucas Hale exactly where the informant said he'd be, sitting alone in the back corner of a cantina called El Cuervo Negro, playing solitaire with a deck of cards so worn they looked ready to disintegrate. The cantina occupied the ground floor of a crumbling building on the edge of a nameless border town, the kind of place that existed in the cracks between empires, where laws were suggestions and loyalty lasted exactly as long as the money did. Sunlight filtered through gaps in the roof, casting long shadows across the dirt floor. The air smelled of tequila, sweat, and desperation. Rodriguez pushed through the door, his scout's instincts immediately cataloging threats. 3 men at the bar, all armed. A card game in the corner that had the feel of something about to turn violent. A woman cleaning glasses who watched everything with the dead-eyed vigilance of someone who'd seen too much. And in the back, barely visible in the shadows, Lucas Hale. He was younger than Rodriguez expected, maybe 30, though it was hard to tell beneath the dust and stubble. He wore the kind of clothes that made him look like every other drifter on the frontier: faded shirt, leather vest, a hat that had seen better decades. His boots were scuffed, but well-maintained. A revolver sat on the table beside his cards, within easy reach but not threatening. Everything about him screamed ordinary, except his eyes. Rodriguez had been a scout for 12 years. He'd tracked Apache warriors across impossible terrain, read weather patterns in cloud formations, spotted ambushes from a quarter-mile out. He knew how to read people the way most men read newspapers. And Lucas Hale's eyes told him one thing: this man missed nothing. Those gray-blue eyes flicked up as Rodriguez approached, taking in everything. The dirt on the scout's boots, the urgency in his walk, the imperial dust still clinging to his jacket from the canyon. A faint smile played at the corner of Hale's mouth. "You're a long way from the fighting," Hale said. His voice was quiet, almost casual, but it carried. "Canyon ambush went south, I'm guessing?" Rodriguez stopped 3 feet from the table. "How did you... You've got canyon dust on your left shoulder, but not your right, which means you've been pressed against a wall facing north. There's fresh powder residue on your trigger finger, but you're not jumpy, you're exhausted. And you came straight to me instead of trying to be subtle about it, which means whatever you need it now." Hale gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Sit." Rodriguez sat, mind racing. Everything the stories said was true. This man was dangerous, not because of the gun, but because of what was between his ears. "General Salazar sent me," Rodriguez said quietly. "He needs... I know what he needs." Hale turned over another card, placed it carefully. "The Sacred Jaguar. The rebellion's Hail Mary. Recover the idol, unite the Pueblos, save the revolution. How am I doing?" Rodriguez's throat went dry. You already know?" "I know everything worth knowing in a 300-mile radius." Hale's eyes never left the cards. "The question isn't whether I know. The question is whether your general can afford me. We can pay. With what? Hale finally looked up, and Rodriguez felt the full weight of that gaze. Your supply lines are cut. Your treasury's empty. Half your officers are dead, and the other half are about to be. So what exactly are you offering me, Scout? Rodriguez reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather envelope. Inside was a contract, hastily written but legally binding, signed by Salazar and witnessed by 3 remaining officers. He slid it across the table. Hale picked it up, scanned it with the speed of someone who'd read 1,000 contracts. His eyebrows rose slightly. 20% of the rebel treasury. Not bad. He kept reading. Amnesty for all past crimes in revolutionary-held territories. Useful. His finger traced down the page. And full ownership of the Esperanza silver mine once the revolution succeeds. He set the contract down and studied Rodriguez with those unsettling eyes. Your general is either desperate or insane. Both, probably, Rodriguez admitted. Will you take the job? Hale was silent for a long moment. Somewhere in the cantina, glass shattered. Someone cursed in slurred Spanish. The woman behind the bar didn't even look up. The idol's been moving through 6 different hands in the past month, Hale said finally. Right now it's in the possession of a double-crosser named Ernesto El Fantasma Reyes, who stole it from a consortium of German arms dealers, who stole it from a church auxiliary, who bought it from bandits, who took it off Ochoa's corpse. You following the chain? Rodriguez nodded, though his head was spinning. El Fantasma sold it 2 days ago to an American businessman named Victor Caldwell. But before Caldwell could take possession, someone, probably one of El Fantasma's former partners, stole it again. Now it's somewhere in the borderlands, moving like a hot potato through every criminal, mercenary, and opportunist who thinks they can cash in. Hale leaned back in his chair. Every empire soldier, every bandito, every con artist from here to California is hunting that idol. You're asking me to walk into the biggest clusterfuck the frontier's ever seen, find one artifact the size of a man's head, and deliver it to a rebellion that might not exist by the time I find it? Yes, Rodriguez said simply. Hale laughed, a genuine surprised sound. You people really are desperate. We're dead without it. You're probably dead with it. Hale tapped the contract. But I'll give you credit. Salazar knows how to write a compelling offer. He stood up, sliding the contract into his jacket. The movement was fluid, practiced. The kind of economy of motion that came from years of staying alive in places where hesitation meant death. Tell your general I'll take the job, Hale said, but he needs to understand something. What's that? Hale picked up his revolver, checked the cylinder, and holstered it in one smooth motion. I don't work for causes. I don't believe in revolutions, and I sure as hell don't trust anyone involved in this mess, including him. His eyes locked on Rodriguez. I'll find the idol. I'll deliver it, and I'll collect my payment. But the second I smell a double cross, the second anyone tries to play me. He let the sentence hang. Rodriguez swallowed hard. Understood. Good. Hale moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. That canyon your general's trapped in, how long does he have? Maybe 10 minutes when I left. Hale checked his pocket watch, then smiled that crooked, dangerous smile. Then I'd suggest you ride fast, Scout. Tell him the contract's signed. Tell him I'm on the job. And tell him... He pushed through the door, sunlight flooding across his face. Tell him impossible jobs just take a little longer. The first betrayal. By the time Rodriguez made it back to the canyon, the Imperials had already begun their assault. Cannon fire thundered across the valley, shaking the ground and sending plumes of smoke into the copper sky. Rifle shots cracked like whips. Men screamed. Somewhere, a horse shrieked in agony. Rodriguez urged his mount up the southern approach, the secret path he'd used to escape. The animal balked at the sounds of battle, eyes rolling white with terror, but Rodriguez drove it forward with desperate urgency. He had to tell Salazar, had to let the general know. A shell exploded 50 yards to his left, showering him with debris. Rodriguez threw himself flat against the horse's neck, clinging on as the animal surged forward in blind panic. When he finally crested the ridge and looked down into the canyon, his heart sank. The rebel position was being systematically destroyed. Imperial artillery had found their range, dropping shells directly onto the defensive positions. Buildings collapsed. Barricades exploded into splinters. Bodies lay motionless in the dust. But the rebels weren't dead yet. Rodriguez could see muzzle flashes from the western wall, hear the defiant war cries of men who'd decided if they were going to die, they'd take as many Imperials with them as possible. General Salazar stood atop a crumbling wall, his white shirt soaked with blood, firing a rifle at the advancing soldiers while screaming orders to his men. "Hold the line! Make every shot count! For Mexico!" Rodriguez drove his horse down the slope, nearly losing control as loose stones gave way beneath the animal's hooves. Bullets whined past his head. A soldier turned toward him, raising a rifle. The soldier's head snapped back. He fell. Rodriguez didn't question the miracle. He just rode harder. He reached the defensive perimeter and threw himself from the saddle, stumbling toward Salazar's position. Lieutenant Vargas grabbed him, steadying him. "Did you find him?" Vargas shouted over the din. "Yes, he took the contract." Vargas's face transformed. He turned, bellowing up at Salazar. "General, Rodriguez is back. Hell accepted." The effect was electric. Salazar's head whipped around, his bloodied face breaking into a fierce grin. He jumped down from the wall with the reckless energy of a man given sudden hope, landing hard but keeping his feet. "What did he say?" Salazar grabbed Rodriguez's shoulders. "He said..." Rodriguez gasped for breath. "He said, impossible jobs just take a little longer." Salazar laughed, a wild, half-mad sound that somehow cut through the chaos of battle. He turned to his men, raising his rifle high. "You hear that? The American is on the job. We just have to stay alive long enough for him to succeed." A ragged cheer went up from the rebels. It shouldn't have mattered. One man hunting one artifact couldn't change the mathematics of the battle they were losing. But it did matter, because sometimes hope was enough to keep men fighting when logic said to surrender. "New plan," Salazar shouted. "Fighting retreat. Alpha team, cover the western approach. Bravo team." A shell landed in the center of the compound. The explosion was deafening. Rodriguez felt himself lifted and thrown backward, the world spinning into chaos. He hit the ground hard, ears ringing, vision blurred. Dust choked his lungs. Heat seared his face. When his vision cleared, he saw Lieutenant Vargas lying 3 feet away, unmoving. Blood pooled beneath the young officer's body. "Vargas!" Rodriguez crawled toward him, grabbed his shoulder. Vargas coughed, blood on his lips. "Go! Tell them we tried!" And then he was gone. Rodriguez knelt there, frozen, as the battle raged around him. Men died, walls collapsed, the Empire tightened its grip. But somewhere out there, a gunslinger with gray-blue eyes was hunting an idol. And for the first time in weeks, General Mateo Salazar allowed himself to believe they might actually survive this. The hunter begins his hunt. 200 miles north, Lucas Hale stood on a ridge overlooking a small trading post, watching 3 different groups of armed men pretend they weren't watching each other. This was going to be fun. The trading post was nothing special, a cluster of buildings around a well, a stable, a general store that doubled as a saloon. The kind of place where information flowed like whiskey and loyalty changed hands for the price of a drink. Hale had spent the past 16 hours gathering intelligence, piecing together the idol's trail like a tracker following scattered prints. The idol had changed hands 4 times in the past week. Each transaction had been messier than the last, leaving a trail of violence, broken deals, and angry creditors from here to the coast. Right now, according to his sources, the idol was in the possession of a smuggler named Cortez, who was using the trading post as a temporary hideout while he negotiated with potential buyers. 3 separate groups had shown up to make those negotiations, and none of them knew about the others. Hale smiled. Group 1, 4 men in dusty trail clothes sitting at a table outside the saloon. Bandits, probably. The kind who'd kill their own mothers for a peso and brag about it afterward. They kept glancing at the stable where Cortez's wagon was parked. Group 2, a well-dressed gentleman and 2 bodyguards staying at the trading post's only boarding room. The gentleman had the look of money, clean clothes, manicured hands, the easy confidence of someone who'd never worried where his next meal was coming from. One of Caldwell's advanced scouts, Hale guessed. Group 3, 5 soldiers in civilian clothes, poorly disguised. They'd arrived an hour ago and immediately started asking too many questions about recent visitors. Imperial Army, no question, and none of them had any idea Hale was watching. He'd learned long ago that the key to impossible jobs wasn't strength or speed, it was information. Know more than your opponents. See further. Understand the game before anyone else even knew they were playing. Right now, all these groups thought they were here for a simple transaction. Buy the idol, kill anyone who got in the way, move on. They had no idea they were walking into a bloodbath. Hale climbed down from the ridge and made his way toward the trading post. He'd left his horse a quarter-mile back. Arriving on foot made him look less threatening, more like just another drifter looking for supplies. The late afternoon sun painted everything in shades of amber and rust. Dust devils spun lazily across the hardpan. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Hale walked through the trading post's entrance like he owned it, tipping his hat to a woman carrying water from the well. His eyes swept the scene, cataloging positions, exits, weapons, blind spots. The bandits at the outdoor table noticed him but didn't react. Just another traveler. The gentleman's bodyguards watched him more carefully. Professional paranoia. The disguised soldiers tried very hard not to look at him, which told Hale everything he needed to know about their training level. Hale walked into the saloon, let his eyes adjust to the dimmer light, and spotted his target immediately. Cortez sat at a corner table, looking like a man who'd swallowed a scorpion and was waiting for it to sting. He was in his 40s, running to fat, with nervous hands that kept fidgeting with his whiskey glass. A leather satchel sat on the table in front of him, too small to hold the idol, which meant it was either hidden in his wagon or Cortez had already sold it. Hale approached the bar, ordered tequila, and waited. 10 minutes later, one of the bandits from outside entered the saloon. He walked straight to Cortez's table and sat down without asking permission. "We need to talk about delivery," the bandit said. Cortez's face went pale. "I told your boss. Tonight. We agreed tonight. Plans changed. We want it now." That's not the deal." The bandit leaned forward. "The deal is you give us the idol, and we don't cut your throat. Everything else is negotiable." Hale sipped his tequila, watching in the mirror behind the bar. This was about to go very wrong. Before Cortez could respond, the saloon doors opened again. The well-dressed gentleman entered, his bodyguards flanking him. He took one look at the scene and smiled. "Gentlemen," he said smoothly, "I believe you're discussing property that rightfully belongs to my employer." The bandit stood up fast, hand going to his gun. "Back off, fancy man. This doesn't concern you." "Oh, but it does." The gentleman gestured and his bodyguards spread out. "Victor Caldwell has already purchased the item in question. This person," he nodded toward Cortez, "is simply holding it until we finalize payment." "The hell he is!" The bandit's voice rose. "We got first claim." And then, because bad situations always got worse, the disguised soldiers entered. "Nobody move!" The lead soldier dropped his civilian pretense, pulling out military identification. "This artifact is property of the Imperial government. By order of General Vasquez, you are all under arrest." The saloon erupted. The bandit went for his gun. One of the bodyguards drew faster and fired. The shot went wide, shattering a whiskey bottle. The other bandits burst in from outside, weapons drawn. The soldiers pulled rifles. Someone flipped a table. A woman screamed. And in the chaos, Cortez grabbed his satchel and ran. Hale sighed, set down his tequila, and followed. The smuggler burst out the back door of the saloon, running toward the stable. Behind him, the trading post had transformed into a war zone. Gunfire, shouting, the crash of breaking furniture. Hale caught up to Cortez 20 yards from the stable. He didn't draw his gun. He just stepped into the man's path and clotheslined him. Cortez went down hard, the satchel flying from his grip. He hit the dirt gasping, clutching his throat. Hale picked up the satchel, opened it. Papers. Money. A few personal effects. No idol. "Where is it?" Hale asked calmly. Cortez wheezed, trying to breathe and talk at the same time. "I don't know what..." Hale pulled his revolver and aimed it casually at Cortez's knee. "I'm going to count to 3. 1. Wagon. It's in the wagon. Hidden compartment under the driver's seat." "Thank you." Hale walked toward the stable. Behind him, gunfire continued to rip through the trading post. He could hear men dying, curses in 3 languages, the chaos of violence without strategy. He found the wagon exactly where he expected it, climbed up to the driver's seat, found the hidden compartment, empty. Hale stared at the vacant space for 3 seconds, running calculations. Then he laughed. Of course it wasn't that easy. Someone had beaten him to it. Someone had already taken the idol from under Cortez's nose, probably hours ago, leaving the smuggler to face the consequences while they slipped away. The question was, who? Hale climbed down from the wagon and walked back into the chaos. A stray bullet whizzed past his head. He ducked reflexively, scanning the scene. The bandits and soldiers were fully engaged, using overturned tables and walls as cover. The gentleman's bodyguards had barricaded themselves in a storage room. Bodies lay in the dirt. The air stank of gunpowder. And there, Hale spotted her immediately. A woman in travel clothes moving through the shadows at the edge of the courtyard. She carried a canvas bag slung over her shoulder, a bag that looked suspiciously heavy for someone fleeing a gunfight. She saw Hale at the same moment he saw her. Their eyes met across the chaos. She smiled, sharp, predatory, and ran. Hale chased her through the trading post and out into the open desert, leaving the gunfight behind. She was fast, but Hale was faster. He closed the distance in 100 yards, diving and tackling her. They went down together, rolling in the dust. The bag flew loose. Hale came up first, but she was right behind him, pulling a knife. "Back off!" she snarled. Hale raised his hands, stepping back. "Easy. I just want to talk. Talk to my blade. I'm looking for the idol, same as everyone else. We could work together." "Like hell." She lunged. Hale sidestepped, caught her wrist, twisted. The knife fell. She tried to knee him, but he blocked it, sweeping her legs. She hit the ground hard, and this time Hale kept her pinned. "I said I want to talk," he repeated. She glared up at him, breathing hard. "You're the American, the one they call Glory." News travels fast. "You're working for the rebels." "I'm working for money." "Who are you working for?" She smiled. "Myself." Hale glanced at the fallen bag. "What's in there?" "Wouldn't you like to know?" He released her and stood, walking to the bag. She didn't try to stop him, just watched with that predatory smile. Hale opened the bag. Inside was a collection of trinkets, stolen goods, and at the bottom, a statue. Small. Carved jade. Intricate detail, but wrong. Hale had seen sketches of the sacred jaguar. This wasn't it. The proportions were off. The carving style was different. He looked at the woman. "This is a fake." "Congratulations, you're smarter than average." "Where's the real one?" She stood up, brushing dust from her clothes. "That's the question everyone's asking. Cortez thought he had the real thing. So did the bandits. So did Caldwell's people. But someone's been playing a shell game, moving fakes around while the real idol stays hidden." "Who?" "If I knew that, I'd be rich." She walked over and snatched the bag from his hands. "But here's what I do know. Every fake has led somewhere. Every person who touched one ended up dead or desperate. And the real idol? It's heading north, toward the border." "How do you know?" "Because that's where the money is. Some American businessman is offering a fortune for it, more than the rebels could ever pay, more than the empire would spend. Whoever has it is going to sell to the highest bidder." Hale studied her. "You have a name?" "Marisol Vega. And before you ask, no, I don't work cheap, and no, I don't share information for free." "What do you want?" "A cut. When you find it, and you will find it because everyone says you're the best, I want 10% of whatever you're getting paid." That's a lot of confidence in someone you just met. "I'm good at reading people." She tilted her head. "You're going to find that idol, and you're going to need help navigating the mess between here and there. So we can work together and both walk away rich, or we can compete and probably both end up dead." Hale considered. She was right about one thing. The situation was getting more complicated by the hour. Having someone who knew the criminal underworld could be useful. 5%, he said. 8. 6. Deal. They shook hands. Behind them, smoke rose from the trading post where men were still killing each other over a fake statue. "So where do we start?" Marisol asked. Hale looked north, toward the border. "We follow the money, and we find out who's smart enough to run this kind of con." That could be anyone. No. Hale's eyes narrowed. It couldn't. This takes resources, connections, and enough guts to play every faction against each other. There's only one man in the territory with that combination. Who? Victor Caldwell. Marisol laughed. The industrialist? You think he's orchestrating this? I think he's the only one who benefits from chaos. Hale started walking north. Everyone's fighting over the idol. Rebels, Imperials, bandits. But Caldwell? He just sits back and watches the price go up, and when everyone's exhausted themselves trying to find it, he swoops in and takes it. Exactly. They walked in silence for a moment, the desert stretching endlessly before them. You know, Marisol said, working with you might actually be interesting. Don't get used to it. The second I have the idol, our partnership ends. We'll see about that. Hale smiled despite himself. She was trouble, he could tell. But she was also right. In a game this complicated, having an ally might be the difference between success and a bullet in the back. Behind them, the gunfight at the trading post was winding down. Winners and losers would be decided. Bodies would be buried. Survivors would scatter, carrying stories of the chaos. But the idol remained out there somewhere, moving through the borderlands like a ghost, and Lucas Hale was on its trail. The Industrialist's Gambit. Victor Caldwell's private train car was a monument to wealth in a land of dust and poverty. Rich mahogany panels lined the walls. Crystal decanters sat on polished tables. Leather chairs faced windows draped with velvet curtains. A map of northern Mexico spread across one entire wall, marked with colored pins indicating mines, railroads, and territories of interest. Caldwell himself stood before that map, a glass of brandy in one hand, studying the pins with the focused intensity of a general planning a campaign. He was 52 years old, silver-haired, impeccably dressed even here in the frontier wilderness. His suit probably cost more than most men earned in a year. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. Everything about him screamed power, money, control. But his eyes held something darker, a calculating coldness that made even his own employees nervous. Sir? His assistant, a nervous young man named Patterson, entered the car. Report from the trading post. And? Complete disaster. The bandits, the soldiers, and our advance team all engaged simultaneously, 7 dead, multiple wounded. The target escaped in the confusion. Caldwell didn't react. He just took a sip of brandy. Cortez? Alive, traumatized. Claims he never had the real artifact. Says it was stolen from his wagon before the confrontation began. By whom? Unknown, though. Patterson hesitated. Speak. There's a report of an American matching Lucas Hale's description at the scene. He was seen leaving with a woman. Now Caldwell turned, eyebrows raised. Glory Hale? The rebels hired him? Appears so, sir. Caldwell returned to studying the map, but a faint smile played at his lips. Interesting. Very interesting. Sir, if Hale is involved, then things just became significantly more complicated and significantly more entertaining. Caldwell gestured to the map. Look at this, Patterson. Look at all these factions fighting over one small artifact. The rebels want it for symbolic power. The Empire wants it to deny that power. Bandits want it for money. The church wants it for religious reasons. Everyone's circling like vultures over a corpse. And us, sir? We want it because whoever controls that idol controls the Pueblo territories, and the Pueblo territories sit on top of the richest silver deposits in North America. Caldwell tapped a cluster of pins in the northern region. The moment the tribes unite under that banner, they become a political force. And political forces can be negotiated with, bought, manipulated. Patterson nodded slowly. You're not trying to suppress the rebellion. You're trying to profit from it. I'm trying to position myself to profit from whoever wins. If the rebels succeed and unite the Pueblos, I negotiate mining rights with the new government. If the Empire crushes them, I buy the territories at auction for a fraction of their value. Caldwell's smile widened. Either way, I win. But sir, if Hale finds the idol first, then I'll buy it from him. Everyone has a price, Patterson, even legendary gunslingers. Caldwell walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a leather portfolio. which is why I'm increasing our offer. $10,000 for the idol, delivered intact. $20,000 if delivered within 1 week. Patterson's eyes widened. That's more than a fortune? Yes, but consider what we stand to gain. The Pueblo territories alone are worth millions. Add in the political leverage, the railroad rights, the future development potential. Caldwell shook his head. 20,000 is a bargain. He handed the portfolio to Patterson. Send this to every informant, every contact, every criminal middleman between here and the Pacific coast. Make sure word reaches Hale. Make sure he knows I'm the highest bidder. And if he refuses, Caldwell's expression hardened, then we move to plan B, which is, we let everyone kill each other over it, then take it from whoever's left standing. Patterson took the portfolio with trembling hands. Yes, sir. I'll get the word out immediately. As the assistant left, Caldwell returned to his brandy and his map. He traced a finger along the projected railroad line, the route that would make him one of the richest men in North America if he could just secure the rights. One little idol, one symbolic artifact, the key to an empire. Come on, Mr. Hale, Caldwell murmured to the empty train car. Show me what you're capable of. Show me if you're really as brilliant as the stories claim. Outside the window, the Mexican landscape rolled past, endless, beautiful, soaked in blood and possibility. The hunt had truly begun. And somewhere out there, Lucas Glory Hale was 3 moves ahead of everyone else. At least, he thought he was. The Double Cross. 4 days later, in a cantina 300 miles northeast of the Trading Post massacre, Hale and Marisol sat across from a nervous fence named Delgado, who swore he knew where the idol was. I'm telling you, Delgado whispered, glancing around the crowded room. I saw it with my own eyes. 2 nights ago, a couple came through, husband and wife, looked like merchants. They had it wrapped in cloth, but I could see the shape. Jaguar head, jade. Authentic. Hale leaned back in his chair. Where are they now? Headed for the border, planning to cross at Paso del Norte, then sell it to American buyers. Names? Dante and Rosa something. I didn't catch the last name. Marisol snorted. That's convenient. Delgado's face flushed. I'm telling the truth. They stayed at the boarding house on Tercera Street. The owner might know more. Hale slid a few coins across the table. If this turns out to be another dead end, it won't be. I swear on my mother's grave. They left Delgado nursing his tequila and walked through the dusty streets toward Tercera. The town was bigger than the Trading Post, but still had that frontier edge. Equal parts commerce and violence, where fortunes changed hands and bodies ended up in alleys. You believe him? Marisol asked. I believe he believes it. Hale's eyes scanned the street, cataloging threats out of habit. Whether he's right is another question. The boarding house was a 2-story adobe building with a faded sign and a tired-looking proprietor who confirmed Delgado's story. Yes, a couple matching that description had stayed 3 nights. Yes, they'd had luggage. Yes, they'd left in a hurry. Did they say where they were going? Hale asked. The proprietor shrugged. North. Everyone goes north eventually. They were halfway back to their own boarding house when Marisol grabbed Hale's arm. Wait. Her voice was sharp. That couple, Dante and Rosa. I know those names. From where? The criminal networks. Dante and Marisol Vega. They're thieves. High-end stuff. They pulled off a job in Monterey 2 years ago, disappeared with a fortune in jewelry. Hale stopped walking. Vega. Like your name. Marisol's face was unreadable. It's a common name. Is it? For a long moment they stared at each other. Then Marisol sighed. Fine. Dante's my brother. Are you happy now? Your brother is one of the thieves we're tracking? I didn't know he was involved. I haven't seen him in 3 years. Hale's hand moved closer to his gun. You expect me to believe that? Believe what you want. But if Dante has that idol, he's making the biggest mistake of his life. Those American buyers he's planning to meet, they'll kill him the second they have it. Dante thinks he's clever, but he's an amateur compared to the people playing this game. Hale studied her, trying to read truth from deception. After 6 days working together, he still wasn't sure he trusted her. But she'd been useful. Her contacts had gotten them this far. "All right," he said finally. "Let's say I believe you. Can you find him?" "Maybe. If he's still using his old patterns, I know where he'd crossed the border." "Then we head north, but Marisol..." Hale's voice went cold. "If this is a setup, if you're playing me, I know, you'll kill me. Everyone makes that threat. I'm still alive." They rode north through country that grew progressively more lawless. The Mexican government's control weakened the farther from the capital you went, creating a gray zone where authority meant whoever had the most guns. 2 days of hard riding brought them to a ramshackle river town that existed purely to facilitate illegal crossings. Smugglers, deserters, criminals, everyone passed through here on their way to somewhere else. Marisol led them to a warehouse on the outskirts of town. "Dante uses this place as a staging area. If he's crossing, he'll stop here first." They circled the building. No guards, no obvious activity, too quiet. Hale drew his revolver. "Something's wrong." They entered through a side door, moving silently through shadows. The warehouse was mostly empty, crates, dust, evidence of past occupancy, but nothing current. Then Hale spotted the blood, a trail of it, leading toward a back room. He followed it, Marisol behind him. The door to the back room was ajar. He pushed it open. Inside, a man sat slumped against the wall, clutching his stomach. His shirt was soaked red. His face was pale, but he was still breathing. "Dante!" Marisol rushed past Hale, dropping to her knees beside her brother. Dante's eyes focused on her with difficulty. "Mari, what are you doing here?" "Trying to save your stupid life." "What happened?" "Double cross." Dante coughed, blood on his lips. "Rosa, she wasn't who I thought. She was working for someone else, the Americans. She took it." "The idol?" "Fake. We had a fake." Dante laughed bitterly. "Spent 2 weeks running, thinking we were rich, but it was a copy, a good one, but not real." Hale knelt beside them. "Where's the real one?" Dante's eyes found him. "You're the American. Glory Hale. I've heard stories." "Where is it, Dante?" "I don't know, but Rosa, she said something before she shot me. Said the whole thing was a setup. That Caldwell's been orchestrating it from the start, moving fakes around, watching everyone chase shadows while he..." Dante's voice faded. "While he what?" Hale pressed. "While he finds the real one." Dante's grip on his wound weakened. She said it's been in plain sight the whole time, hidden where no one would think to look." "Where, Dante?" Marisol grabbed his hand. "Where?" But Dante was gone. Marisol closed her brother's eyes, her face a mask of grief and fury. Hale gave her a moment, then spoke quietly. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He made his choices." She stood, wiping her eyes. "But Rosa? Rosa's going to answer for this." "First we need to figure out what Dante meant. Hidden in plain sight? What does that even mean?" Marisol was silent for a long moment, thinking. Then her eyes widened. "The pawn shop." "What?" 3 weeks ago, there was a robbery in a frontier town called Salvation. A pawn shop owned by an old man named Morrison. The thieves didn't take money. They were looking for something specific. But they left empty-handed. Hale's mind raced. "You think the idol's there?" "Dante used Morrison as a fence sometimes. If you wanted to hide something valuable where no one would look, a pawn shop full of random junk would be perfect. That's a long shot. You have a better idea?" Hale didn't, and the more he thought about it, the more sense it made. Hide the real idol among 1,000 other items. Let everyone chase fakes and rumors while the genuine article sat on a shelf gathering dust. It was exactly the kind of audacious move someone like Caldwell would make. "All right," Hale said, "we ride for Salvation, but we're not the only ones who'll figure this out. If Caldwell knows, if the Empire knows, then Salvation's about to become very popular." They left Dante's body in the warehouse and rode west, toward a small town that was about to become the deadliest place on the frontier. Behind them, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. The chase was entering its final phase, and soon everyone would converge on one place. One pawn shop, one idol. The town of Salvation sat in a shallow valley between two mesas, connected to the rest of civilization by a single rutted road that turned to mud when it rained and dust when it didn't. Population maybe 300 on a good day, half that when the mines weren't producing. The kind of place people pass through on their way to somewhere better. Morrison's Pawn and Trade occupied a corner building on Main Street, identifiable by the faded sign and the collection of random objects visible through the dusty windows. Farm tools, musical instruments, a stuffed bobcat that had seen better days, the accumulated debris of frontier life, bought cheap and sold cheaper. Hale and Marisol rode into town just after dawn, when the streets were still mostly empty. They'd pushed hard through the night, switching horses twice, driven by the certainty that they weren't the only ones who'd figured out where the idol was hiding. "Looks quiet," Marisol observed, scanning the buildings. "Too quiet." Hale's eyes tracked movement in the shadows. "See the saloon? Second floor window. Someone's watching." Marisol followed his gaze. "Could be anyone." "Could be. But that someone arrived before we did, which means they're either very good or very lucky." They dismounted in front of the general store, tying their horses where they'd have a clear escape route. Hale checked his revolver, ensuring the cylinder was fully loaded. Marisol did the same with her own weapon, a smaller pistol she kept hidden in her coat. "What's the plan?" she asked. "We go in, we find Morrison, we verify the idol's there, then we negotiate. And if someone else tries to take it," Hale's smile was cold, "then we remind them why negotiation is preferable to violence." They crossed the street toward the pawn shop. The morning sun painted long shadows across the dirt. A dog barked somewhere. A shutter banged in the wind. The pawn shop door was unlocked. A bell chimed as they entered. Inside was exactly what Hale expected, chaos organized by some logic known only to its owner. Shelves lined every wall, packed with items of dubious value. A glass display case held jewelry, pocket watches, a collection of knives. Tools hung from the ceiling. Books were stacked in precarious towers. The air smelled of dust, old leather, and lamp oil. Behind the counter sat an old man with wire-rimmed glasses and hands gnarled by arthritis. Morrison, presumably. He looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from neutral to wary. "We're closed," he said. "Door was unlocked," Hale replied. "That don't mean we're open." Hale approached the counter slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "We're looking for an item, a carved jade statue, Aztec origin, about this big." He held his hands apart. "Someone might have brought it in recently, might have sold it to you." Morrison's face remained impassive, but Hale caught the slight tension in his shoulders. The old man knew something. "Don't recall anything like that." "Look again. We're willing to pay well." "I said I don't recall." Marisol moved to the window, ostensibly examining a music box, but really watching the street. "We've got company," she said quietly. 3 riders. Coming in from the east." Hale didn't turn. He kept his eyes on Morrison. "Those riders friends of yours?" "Don't have friends, just customers." "Then you've got 3 new customers who probably want the same thing we do." Hale leaned on the counter. "Now, we can all stand here pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. Or you can save us time and show me the statue. Because in about 2 minutes, this shop is going to get very crowded and someone's going to get hurt." Morrison stared at him for a long moment. Then he sighed, removed his glasses, and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "You're Hale, aren't you? The one they call Glory." "I am. Figured you'd show up eventually. Everyone else has." "Everyone else?" "Had Imperial soldiers here 3 days ago, bandits 2 days before that. Yesterday, some woman came through, asking questions, waving money around." Morrison replaced his glasses. "Whatever that statue is, it's brought nothing but trouble. Do you have it or not?" Morrison hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Back room. Came in 6 weeks ago. Man said it was a family heirloom, needed quick cash. I gave him $50 for it." $50 for an artifact worth a fortune? Didn't know what it was worth then. Didn't know what it was worth until people started killing each other over it. Morrison stood, joints creaking. "Come on, but if shooting starts, I'm holding you responsible for damages." He led them through a curtain into the back room, a smaller space crammed with even more items awaiting evaluation or repair. Morrison went to a locked cabinet, produced a key, and opened it. Inside, wrapped in burlap, was the sacred jaguar of Tenochtitlan. Hale unwrapped it carefully. The statue was smaller than he'd imagined, maybe 10 inches tall, but exquisitely crafted. Jade so pure it seemed to glow in the lamplight. The jaguar's face was fierce, regal, eternal. Eyes inlaid with obsidian stared back at him with unsettling intelligence. This was it, the real thing. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Morrison said quietly. "Almost makes you believe in the old stories." Hale rewrapped the statue. "How much do you want for it?" "More than you can pay. More than anyone can pay." Morrison shook his head. "But I'm tired of the trouble. Tired of looking over my shoulder. So here's my price. You take it, and you leave. No money. Just get it out of my shop before someone burns the place down looking for it." "That's remarkably generous. That's self-preservation." Before Hale could respond, the bell over the front door chimed. Footsteps. Multiple people entering. Marisol appeared in the doorway, hand on her pistol. "The riders. They're here." Hale wrapped the statue completely and tucked it into his coat. "Back door?" Morrison pointed. "Through the storage room, but it only leads to the alley." "That'll have to do." They moved quickly, Morrison leading them through narrow passages between stacked merchandise. Behind them, voices echoed from the main shop. "Don't care if you're closed. We know it's here." "I don't know what you're talking about." The sound of breaking glass, a crash. "Last chance, old man. Where's the idol?" Hale paused, muscles tensing. Marisol grabbed his arm. "Don't," she hissed. "We have what we came for." "They're going to tear his shop apart." He knew the risks. Hale met her eyes. She was right. Getting involved would only complicate things. But leaving Morrison to face the consequences alone sat wrong in his gut. "Go," Morrison said, as if reading his thoughts. "I've dealt with worse than this. Just promise me you'll make this worth something. That statue, whatever it represents, make sure it matters." Hale nodded once. Then he and Marisol slipped out the back door into the alley. The morning sun was higher now, heating the air rapidly. The alley ran behind the buildings on Main Street, littered with refuse and broken crates. Their horses were 2 buildings away. They'd made it maybe 20 feet when a voice called out, "Hold it right there!" Hale turned. A woman stood at the mouth of the alley, mid-30s, dark hair, expensive clothes that looked out of place in this frontier town. She held a derringer in one hand, pointed steadily at Hale's chest. Rosa. Had to be. The woman who'd killed Dante. "You must be Marisol," Rosa said, her gaze shifting. "Dante talked about you, said you were smarter than him. Guess he was right." Marisol's hand moved toward her weapon. Rosa's derringer tracked the movement. "I wouldn't. This little gun might look dainty, but it'll put a hole in you just fine at this range." "You killed my brother," Marisol said flatly. "Your brother tried to double-cross the wrong people. I did him a favor, made it quick." Rosa's smile was cold. "Now, I'm going to need that statue Mr. Hale is carrying. Hand it over, and we can all walk away." "And if I refuse?" Hale asked. "Then I shoot you, take it anyway, and Ms. Vega here can join her brother." Hale considered his options. Rosa was too far for him to reach before she fired, and while the derringer only had 2 shots, at this distance she wouldn't need more. "Who are you working for?" he asked, stalling. "Caldwell?" "Smart and observant. Yes, Mr. Caldwell hired me to track the idol and eliminate competition. You've been quite the nuisance, Mr. Hale, leading everyone on a merry chase, getting closer to the truth." Rosa took a step forward. "But this is where it ends. The statue, please." Movement behind Rosa, a shadow in the street. Hale kept his expression neutral, keeping Rosa's attention on him. "Caldwell must be paying you well. Enough to retire. Enough to disappear. Now stop stalling," and the shadow resolved into a man. He moved with surprising speed for someone his size, grabbing Rosa from behind and wrenching the derringer from her hand. Rosa screamed, twisting. The man, one of the riders who'd entered the pawn shop, threw her against the alley wall. She hit hard and slumped. The man turned to face Hale and Marisol. He was big, rough-looking, with scars that told stories of violence survived. 2 more men appeared behind him, equally dangerous. "Appreciate the distraction," the big man said. His accent was thick, European, German, maybe. Now, you give us the idol, and we let you live. Fair trade, yes? Who are you? Hale asked, though he could guess. We represent certain business interests. The idol belongs to us. Funny. The rebels seem to think it belongs to them. The rebels are losing their war. We are the future. The big man gestured. The statue. Now. Hale's mind raced. 3 armed men, Rosa unconscious but potentially dangerous if she woke, an alley with limited escape routes. The odds were terrible. But he'd faced terrible odds before. All right, Hale said, reaching into his coat. But I'm curious, what do business interests want with a religious artifact? We want what it represents. Control. Influence. The big man's smile was predatory. The Pueblo tribes, united under one banner, become a market, a labor force, a resource to be exploited. Surely you understand this. I understand you're about to be disappointed. Hale's hand emerged from his coat, not with the statue, but with his revolver. He fired twice in rapid succession, aiming not for the men but for the supports holding up a rickety balcony above them. The wood splintered. The balcony groaned and collapsed, raining debris onto the alley. The Germans scattered, cursing, trying to avoid being crushed. Run! Hale grabbed Marsol's arm and they sprinted toward their horses. Behind them, gunfire erupted. Bullets whined past, splintering wood, kicking up dirt. Hale fired back without looking, more to keep their pursuers cautious than to hit anything. They reached the horses. Hale vaulted into the saddle, Marisol right behind him on her own mount. They dug in their heels, and the animals surged forward. Main Street erupted into chaos. The 3 riders from earlier, the Germans, had reached the street. Morrison's pawnshop door burst open, and more men poured out, the ones who'd been threatening the old shopkeeper. Someone fired from a second-story window. Someone else returned fire. Within seconds, the entire town transformed into a battlefield. Hale and Marisol rode straight through the middle of it, ducking low as bullets flew in every direction. A man stumbled in front of Hale's horse, blood spreading across his shirt. The horse jumped over him and kept running. "Where are we going?" Marisol shouted over the gunfire. "Away from here!" They made it to the edge of town before Hale realized they were being followed. Not by the Germans or Rosa's people, by someone else entirely. A single rider on a black horse, gaining ground fast. Hale glanced back and his blood went cold. Imperial cavalry uniform, officer's insignia. "Company," he called to Marisol. She looked back, cursed. "How many?" "Just one. But where there's one..." As if summoned by his words, more riders appeared from a side canyon, a full squad of Imperial cavalry, riding in formation, moving to cut them off. Hale made a split-second decision. "Into the rocks." They veered off the road toward a tumble of boulders and scrub brush, terrain that favored individual riders over organized units. The horses scrambled up a rocky slope, hooves finding purchase on stone. The cavalry followed, but their formation broke apart in the rough ground. Hale led Marisol through a narrow gap between 2 boulders, then up a steep incline that made the horses wheeze with effort. At the top he paused, scanning the landscape. Behind them, the cavalry was spreading out, trying to flank them. Ahead, more open ground, dangerous but necessary. To the east, smoke rising from what might be another settlement or might be trouble. "We can't outrun them forever," Marisol said, her horse dancing nervously. "We don't need forever, just until dark. That's hours away. Then we need to be creative." Hale urged his horse forward, angling toward a rocky outcropping that might provide cover. They'd almost reached it when a shot rang out, not from behind, but from the outcropping itself. Both horses reared. Hale fought to keep his seat as more shots came, kicking up dust around them. An ambush. "Back!" Hale shouted, turning his horse. But the cavalry was closing in from that direction, cutting off retreat. They were trapped. Hale's mind worked frantically. The statue was still in his coat, pressed against his ribs. If he surrendered, the Empire would take it and use it to crush the rebellion. If he fought, they'd kill him and take it anyway. But there was a third option. "Marisol!" He reached into his coat. "Catch!" He threw the wrapped statue to her. She caught it instinctively, eyes wide with shock. "What are you—" "Ride east! Don't stop! Get it to the rebels! I'm not leaving you!" You're not leaving me. You're completing the job. Hale drew his revolver, checking the remaining rounds. I'll draw them off. You run. Now. For a moment she hesitated, torn between self-preservation and something else. Loyalty, maybe, or the partnership they'd built over the past week. Then her face hardened. Don't get killed, Hale. I'll try my best. She dug her heels in and her horse exploded forward, racing east toward the rising smoke. Hale immediately turned toward the cavalry, firing twice to get their attention. It worked. The officer leading the squad shouted orders, redirecting his men toward Hale. Hale rode straight at them. It was insane, suicidal, exactly the kind of move that had earned him his reputation. The cavalry soldiers, expecting him to flee, hesitated for a crucial second. Hale used that second to ride between two of them, firing at a third. His shot went wide, but the soldier's horse panicked, throwing its rider. Then Hale was through their line, racing back toward Salvation with half a dozen mounted soldiers chasing him. He'd bought Marisol maybe 5 minutes, maybe less. But it was enough for her to disappear into the Badlands, where organized cavalry couldn't follow. Now, he just had to survive. The town was still in chaos when Hale thundered back onto Main Street. The gunfight had spread, drawing in locals who'd been waiting for an excuse to settle old grudges. Bodies lay in the street. Buildings burned. Someone had overturned a wagon, using it as a barricade. Hale rode straight through it all, the cavalry still behind him. He needed cover, needed to lose them in the confusion. Morrison's pawn shop was on fire now, flames licking through the roof. Hale felt a stab of guilt but didn't slow down. The old man had known the risks. He guided his horse into an alley, then immediately dismounted and slapped the animal's flank, sending it running. Let the cavalry follow the horse. He'd go on foot. Hale ducked into a doorway as hoofbeats thundered past, 3 soldiers chasing the riderless horse. Good. But the officer was smarter. He'd dismounted as well, was moving through the chaos with his pistol drawn, eyes scanning for his target. Hale circled around, using the buildings as cover. He needed to lose this man, needed to get clear of the town before... Freeze! The voice came from behind him. Hale stopped, hands slowly rising. Turn around, slowly. Hale turned. The officer stood 10 feet away, pistol aimed at Hale's chest. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of face that hadn't yet learned to hide emotion. Right now, that emotion was triumph mixed with fear. Lucas Hale, the officer said. You're under arrest for crimes against the Empire. That's a long list. You'll need to be more specific. Theft, murder, sedition, working with rebel forces. The officer's gun hand was steady. Where is the idol? What idol? Don't play games. We know you had it. Where is it? Hale smiled. Gone, heading east with my partner. By now she's miles from here. The officer's face tightened. You're lying. Am I? Search me if you don't believe me. For a moment, the officer seemed to consider it. Then distant shouting drew his attention. More soldiers arriving, responding to the chaos. On your knees, the officer commanded. Hands behind your head. Hale complied, mind still working. If they took him alive, they'd interrogate him. Torture, probably. Try to find out where Marisol was heading. And eventually they'd break him. Everyone broke eventually. Unless. As Hale knelt, he deliberately shifted his weight, making it look like he was losing balance. The officer's eyes tracked the movement, exactly what Hale wanted. In that split second of distraction, Hale's hand shot to his boot, where a small knife was hidden. He threw it in one smooth motion. The blade took the officer in the shoulder. Not a killing blow, but enough to make him stagger backward, his shot going wild. Hale was on him before he could recover, disarming him with practiced efficiency. They struggled briefly, but Hale had the advantage of experience. Within seconds, the officer was on the ground, unconscious from a blow to the head. Hale took the officer's pistol, checked the ammunition, and kept moving. The town was a maze of smoke and violence now. The gunfight had evolved into something chaotic and unpredictable, with multiple factions fighting for reasons that had nothing to do with the idol. Old grudges, territorial disputes, simple opportunism. Hale used the chaos to slip through the madness, heading for the western edge of town where he'd spotted a stable earlier. If he could get another horse... Hale! He turned. A figure emerged from the smoke. Rosa, bloodied but alive. She held a rifle now, must have scavenged it from one of the bodies. "This ends now," she said. "You really want to do this? The town's falling apart around us." "I want that statue, and I want you dead." She raised the rifle. "Where is it?" "Even if I told you, you'd never catch her. Marisol's too good." Rosa's face twisted with fury. "Then you're no use to me." She fired. Hale dove behind a water trough as the bullet whined past. He returned fire, forcing Rosa back. They traded shots, neither able to get a clean hit through the smoke and chaos. Then a building collapsed nearby, the flames finally eating through its supports. The crash sent debris flying, momentarily obscuring everything. When the dust cleared, Rosa was gone. Hale didn't wait around to find out where she'd disappeared to. He made it to the stable, found a decent horse, and rode out of Salvation as the entire town burned behind him. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Hale rode east, following the trail Marisol would have taken. She had a significant head start, but he knew her patterns by now, knew where she'd go. The question was whether he could reach her before someone else did. Behind him, Salvation continued to tear itself apart. By morning, there'd be nothing left but ashes and bodies. All because of one statue, one symbol, one desperate gamble by a dying rebellion. Hale rode through the gathering darkness, alone with his thoughts and the distant sound of gunfire. Somewhere ahead, Marisol carried the sacred jaguar toward its destiny. Somewhere behind, armies were mobilizing, hunting for the prize that could change everything. And Hale was caught in the middle, committed to a contract he wasn't sure he could fulfill. The frontier stretched endlessly before him, beautiful and brutal, full of possibility and death. He dug his heels in and rode faster. The night swallowed him whole, and the hunt continued. 3 days later, Hale caught up with Marisol at an abandoned mining camp in the foothills. She'd set up a defensive position in one of the old buildings, had a fire going, looked like she'd been expecting him. "Took you long enough?" she said as he dismounted. "Had to make sure I wasn't followed. The Empire's got search parties everywhere." "I noticed. Dodged 2 of them yesterday." Marisol gestured to a pot over the fire. "Coffee's hot. You look like you need it." Hale poured himself a cup, savoring the bitter warmth. "The statue?" Marisol patted her saddlebag. "Safe. Though I'll admit I've been tempted to look at it more closely." "Don't. The less we interact with it, the better." "Superstitious?" "Practical. That thing's already gotten too many people killed." They sat in companionable silence for a while, drinking coffee and watching the fire. Finally, Marisol spoke. "What happened in Salvation after I left?" "The town tore itself apart. Empire, bandits, treasure hunters, everyone fighting everyone. Last I saw, the whole place was burning." "Morrison?" Hale shook his head. "Don't know. Didn't see him after we left." Marisol stared into the fire. "My brother's dead. The town's destroyed. All for this." She gestured at the saddlebag. "Is it worth it?" "That's not for us to decide. We're just the delivery mechanism." "You really believe that? That we're just neutral parties in all this?" Hale considered the question. "No, but I learned a long time ago that the moment you start believing in causes, you stop thinking clearly. And in our line of work, that gets you killed. Yet, here you are, risking your life to deliver this to the rebels. Here I am fulfilling a contract. There's a difference." "Is there?" Before Hale could answer, a sound cut through the night. Hoofbeats. Multiple riders approaching fast. Hale and Marisol were on their feet instantly, weapons drawn. The fire made them visible, but dousing it now would only signal that they knew they'd been found. The riders emerged from the darkness, 5 of them, riding in formation. As they came closer, Hale recognized the lead rider, General Salazar. The rebel leader looked worse than when Hale had left him in that canyon. Thinner, exhausted, but alive, which was more than Hale had expected. Salazar dismounted, his men spreading out in a defensive perimeter. He walked toward the fire, and Hale saw the hope burning in his eyes. "Mr. Hale, Ms. Vega, I'd begun to think you weren't coming." "We ran into complications," Hale said. "So I heard. Salvation is a crater. The Empire's searching the entire territory. Half the criminal underworld wants you dead." Salazar smiled tiredly. But you have it, don't you? The sacred jaguar. Marisol pulled the wrapped statue from her saddlebag and handed it to Salazar. The general unwrapped it with trembling hands. Even in the firelight, the jade seemed to glow. Salazar stared at it with an expression that was almost reverent. After all this time, he whispered, after all the blood and sacrifice, we finally have it. Will it be enough? Hale asked. It has to be. The Pueblo elders have agreed to meet. If we can present this to them, prove our legitimacy, they'll commit their warriors. Salazar carefully rewrapped the statue. 10,000 fighters, Mr. Hale. Maybe more. Enough to turn this war around. And if they don't believe it's real, then we've already lost. But I have to believe this means something, that all the death, all the suffering, it leads somewhere. Hale said nothing. He'd seen too many causes fail, too many beliefs crushed by harsh reality. But he also understood why men like Salazar needed to believe. Without that belief, what was left? Salazar pulled out a leather pouch and tossed it to Hale. It landed heavy in his hands. Your payment, as agreed in the contract. Hale opened the pouch. Gold coins, more than he'd expected. Enough to disappear, start over, live comfortably for years. The mine deed? He asked. Once we win, if we win. Salazar met his eyes. I'm a man of my word, Mr. Hale. You delivered the impossible. I'll honor our agreement. And if you lose, then the deed won't matter. The Empire will seize everything anyway. Salazar mounted his horse, his men doing the same. Thank you, Mr. Hale. You may not believe in our cause, but you've given us a fighting chance. That's more than anyone else has done. As the rebels prepared to leave, Marisol stepped forward. General, one more thing. She pulled out a small journal from her coat. While we were tracking the idol, we documented everything. Who's hunting it, what they're willing to pay, where their resources are. She handed it to Salazar. Consider it a parting gift. Maybe it'll help keep you alive. Salazar took the journal, surprised. Thank you, Ms. Vega. Thank my brother. He taught me to always keep records. The rebels rode off into the night, taking the sacred jaguar with them. Hale and Marisol stood by the fire, watching them disappear. You think they'll make it? Marisol asked. Honestly? No idea. But they've got a better shot now than they did a week ago. And us? What now? Hale looked at the pouch of gold in his hand, then at Marisol. I'm heading west. California, maybe. Somewhere quiet where people don't shoot at me. Sounds boring. Boring sounds good right now. Marisol smiled. Well, it's been an adventure, Hale. If you ever need a partner again, I'll know where to find trouble. They shook hands, two people who'd survived impossible odds through a combination of skill, luck, and mutual distrust. Then Marisol mounted her horse and rode south, toward Mexico City, and whatever new schemes awaited her there. Hale stood alone by the fire, the gold heavy in his hand, the vast frontier stretching in every direction. He'd completed the job, delivered the impossible, earned a fortune. So why did it feel unfinished? The answer came to him as he stared into the flames, because the real game was just beginning. The idol might be with the rebels now, but the forces hunting it, Caldwell, the Empire, the Germans, Rosa, they weren't going to give up. They'd track Salazar down. They'd find the Pueblo meeting, and when they did, blood would flow like rivers. Hale could walk away, should walk away. The contract was fulfilled. His conscience was clear. But something nagged at him. A detail. Something Dante had said before he died, hidden in plain sight, where no one would think to look. Hale's eyes widened. The statue Salazar was carrying, the one they'd taken from Morrison's pawn shop. What if... No, it couldn't be. But the more he thought about it, the more sense it made. The perfect con. The ultimate misdirection. What if the real sacred jaguar had never left its original location? What if Ochoa had commissioned a perfect copy before he died, sent that copy into circulation while hiding the real one somewhere safe? And what if Morrison's statue, the one everyone had been chasing, was just another fake? Hale swore violently and kicked dirt over the fire. If he was right, Salazar was riding into a meeting with Pueblo elders carrying a worthless replica. The rebels would be exposed as frauds. The pueblos would refuse to join. The revolution would collapse. And somewhere, someone who'd orchestrated this entire elaborate shell game was laughing. Hale ran to his horse, mind racing. He had to catch Salazar, had to warn him before it was too late. He rode through the night, pushing his horse to the edge of endurance. The Pueblo meeting was supposed to happen in 3 days at a sacred site in the Northern Territories. If he rode hard, didn't stop, he might make it. Or he might arrive just in time to watch everything fall apart. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to human struggles. The desert stretched endlessly, and somewhere ahead the final act of this deadly game was about to begin. Hale rode harder, driven by something he couldn't name. Not duty, not honor. Maybe just the stubborn refusal to be outsmarted by whoever was pulling the strings. The hunt wasn't over. It had only just begun. Hale's horse collapsed 2 miles from the sacred site, foam flecking its muzzle, legs trembling with exhaustion. He'd pushed the animal too hard, riding through 2 days and nights with barely any rest. The horse had given everything it had, and now it was done. Hale dismounted, removed the saddle and bridle, and left the animal with access to a small stream. The horse would either recover or it wouldn't. Either way, Hale was continuing on foot. He could see smoke rising in the distance, cook fires from the gathering. The Pueblo elders had chosen a canyon sacred to their people, a place where their ancestors had held councils for generations. Natural amphitheater carved by ancient waters, walls decorated with paintings that predated the Spanish conquest. Neutral ground where weapons were traditionally forbidden. That tradition was about to be tested. Hale approached cautiously, using the terrain for cover. As he drew closer, he began to see the scope of the gathering. Hundreds of people, Pueblo leaders from a dozen different communities, their warriors, advisors, families. Tents and temporary shelters dotted the canyon floor. Fires burned. Voices carried on the wind, speaking in languages Hale didn't understand. And at the center of it all, a large ceremonial space where General Salazar and his remaining officers stood with the wrapped statue. Hale was too late. The meeting had already begun. He worked his way closer, staying low, moving through the scattered rocks and brush that lined the canyon rim. From his vantage point, he could see the ceremony unfolding below. An elderly Pueblo man, the chief elder, Hale guessed, sat on a woven mat facing Salazar. Other elders formed a semicircle around them. The atmosphere was formal, solemn. This wasn't just a political negotiation. It was a spiritual moment. Salazar was speaking, his voice carrying across the canyon. Hale couldn't make out all the words, but the tone was passionate, pleading. The general was making his case, explaining the rebellion's cause, asking for the Pueblos' support. Then Salazar gestured to one of his men, who brought forward the wrapped statue. The crowd fell silent. Salazar unwrapped the sacred jaguar with reverent hands, holding it up for all to see. Even from a distance, Hale could see the jade gleaming in the afternoon sun. The chief elder rose slowly, arthritis making each movement deliberate. He approached the statue, studying it with eyes that had seen 7 decades of life. He reached out, touching the jade with weathered fingers. And then his expression changed. The elder's face hardened. He stepped back, speaking sharply in his native tongue. Other elders rose, their body language shifting from respectful attention to anger. Salazar looked confused. What's wrong? One of the younger Pueblo leaders who spoke Spanish translated. This is not the sacred jaguar. What are you talking about? This is a forgery, a copy. Well made, perhaps, but not the true artifact. The translator's voice was cold. Did you think we wouldn't know? That we couldn't recognize our own sacred heritage? Salazar's face went pale. No, there must be some mistake. We recovered this from thieves and criminals, no doubt. You bring us a false idol and expect us to join your war? The chief elder spoke again, and the translator continued. You dishonor this sacred ground. You dishonor our ancestors. Leave, now, before we forget the laws of hospitality. The Pueblo warriors moved forward, hands on weapons despite the sacred ground prohibition. Salazar's men responded, forming a defensive circle around their general. The situation was seconds away from violence. Hale made a decision. He stood up from his hiding spot and walked down into the canyon, hands visible and empty. Every eye turned toward him. Wait! Hale called out in Spanish. "Before anyone does something they'll regret, let me speak." Salazar's head whipped around. "Hale? What are you doing here?" "Saving your life, apparently." Hale approached the center of the gathering, aware that dozens of weapons were now pointed at him. "Chief Elder, respected leaders, I apologize for the interruption, but I have information that might interest you." The Chief Elder studied him with sharp eyes. "Who are you, white man?" "My name is Lucas Hale. I was contracted by General Salazar to recover the sacred jaguar. I believed I had succeeded." He gestured to the statue Salazar still held. "But it seems I was wrong." "You brought them a fake," one of the younger Pueblo leaders said accusingly. "I brought them what I found, but I've been thinking about that." Hale turned to face the entire assembly. "The real idol has been missing for months. In that time, it's supposedly changed hands a dozen times. Every criminal, mercenary, and treasure hunter in the territory has been chasing it. But what if they were all chasing shadows?" Salazar frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying someone's been running the most elaborate con the frontier has ever seen, moving copies around, letting everyone chase rumors while the real artifact stays hidden." Hale's eyes swept the crowd. "And I think I know where it is." The Chief Elder raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. "Speak." "The original theft from Ochoa. Everyone assumed the thief took the idol to sell it. But what if the thief was working for someone else? Someone who wanted everyone to think the idol was in circulation when it actually wasn't." "Victor Caldwell," Salazar breathed. "You think Caldwell orchestrated all of this?" "I think Caldwell is the only one with the resources and motivation to pull it off. He's been watching everyone scramble, watching the price go up, waiting for the perfect moment to—" A gunshot cracked across the canyon. Hale dove for cover as chaos erupted. The shot had come from the canyon rim, not from where Hale had been, but from the opposite side. More shots followed, concentrated fire aimed at the Pueblo elders. Warriors scattered, drawing weapons. Salazar's men returned fire. The sacred ground was forgotten as survival instincts took over. Hale crawled behind a boulder and looked up at the rim. Figures were visible now, at least 20 armed men firing down into the canyon, professional shooters, organized and coordinated. Caldwell's mercenaries, had to be. But they weren't trying to steal the idol. They were trying to massacre everyone present. "Fall back," the Pueblo war chief shouted. "Protect the elders." The warriors formed a defensive perimeter, using their bodies as shields. Salazar's rebels did the same, and for a moment the two groups that had been on the verge of fighting each other were now fighting side by side against a common enemy. Hale spotted movement on the canyon floor. Mercenaries descending on ropes, trying to establish positions. He drew his revolver and fired, dropping one before he reached the ground. The man's rope went slack, and he fell the remaining 15 feet, hitting the rocks with a sickening crunch. "Hale!" Salazar had taken cover behind an overturned cart. "We need to get the elders out of here." "Where?" "They've got both exits covered." As if to emphasize the point, a group of mercenaries appeared at the canyon's southern entrance, cutting off the most obvious escape route. They advanced in formation, rifles ready, moving like military professionals. The Pueblo warriors engaged them immediately, and the canyon became a killing ground. Arrows flew alongside bullets, men screamed, blood stained the sacred earth. Hale fought his way toward Salazar's position, firing when he had clear shots, conserving ammunition when he didn't. A mercenary appeared to his left and Hale shot him. Another came from the right, and Hale ducked a knife thrust, countering with a punch that broke the man's nose. He reached Salazar just as a bullet grazed the general's shoulder. "You hit?" Hale grabbed him. "I'll live, but we can't hold this position. There's too many of them." Hale's mind raced, analyzing the tactical situation. The mercenaries had superior numbers and position. The defenders were trapped in an indefensible location. Every second that passed, more people died. But the mercenaries had made one mistake. They'd assumed the Pueblo warriors were simple tribesmen who'd break under professional assault. They were wrong. The Pueblo fighters had been defending their lands for generations. They knew this terrain. They knew how to fight as a coordinated unit. And now that their sacred ground had been violated, their fury was terrible. The war chief gave a command and the warriors executed a tactical retreat, not fleeing, but falling back to better defensive positions among the rocks and ancient dwellings carved into the canyon walls. The mercenaries pursued and walked straight into prepared kill zones. Arrows rained down from unexpected angles. Rocks were dislodged from above, crushing attackers. Warriors who'd seemed to retreat suddenly flanked their pursuers. The tide began to turn, but the cost was horrific. Bodies littered the canyon floor, Pueblo, rebel, and mercenary alike. The cook fires had been scattered, spreading flames to the tents. Smoke choked the air. Through the chaos, Hale caught sight of a familiar figure directing the mercenary assault from the northern rim. Rosa. She'd survived salvation and apparently thrown her lot in completely with Caldwell. She stood next to a man in expensive clothes who could only be Victor Caldwell himself, pointing and giving orders. Hale felt cold fury wash through him. This massacre, this violation of sacred ground, it wasn't about the idol at all. It was about eliminating competition. Caldwell had let everyone chase the idol, let them gather in one place, and now he was wiping them all out. "I'm going after Caldwell," Hale told Salazar. "Are you insane? You'll never make it." "Probably not. But if I don't try, he gets away with this." Hale didn't wait for a response. He moved through the battle, using smoke and confusion as cover, working his way toward the northern canyon wall. A rope hung from where the mercenaries had descended. Hale grabbed it and started climbing. A mercenary spotted him halfway up and took aim. Hale couldn't defend himself without letting go of the rope. He prepared for the bullet. It didn't come. Instead, the mercenary jerked and fell, an arrow in his throat. Hale looked down and saw one of the Pueblo warriors giving him a brief nod before turning back to the fight. Hale kept climbing. He reached the rim and rolled over the edge, coming up with his revolver drawn. 2 mercenaries turned toward him. He shot them both, the reports echoing across the canyon. Caldwell and Rosa spun around. For a moment, the 3 of them stood frozen. Hale with his gun, Rosa reaching for hers, Caldwell's face showing more annoyance than fear. "Mr. Hale," Caldwell said calmly, "I should have known you'd survive. You're quite resourceful." "Call off your men," Hale said. "Why would I do that?" "Because if you don't, I put a bullet between your eyes." Caldwell smiled. "You could, but then you'd never find the real sacred jaguar." Hale's finger tightened on the trigger. "I'm listening. I have it, of course. Had it all along. The whole chase, all those copies floating around. Pure theater. I wanted everyone exhausted, desperate, gathering in one convenient location." Caldwell gestured to the battle below. "And now I'm eliminating all potential buyers and claimants. Once this is over, the idol will be mine, and mine alone." "Where is it?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll never find it without my help." Rosa had her gun out now, aimed at Hale. Mexican standoff. He could shoot Caldwell, but Rosa would shoot him. Or he could shoot Rosa, but then Caldwell would escape. Below, the battle raged on. People were dying while Hale stood here playing word games with a man who thought human life was a commodity. "You're going to lose," Hale said. "The Pueblos and rebels are fighting together now. Your mercenaries are dying. Even if you escape today, they'll hunt you down." "Perhaps. Or perhaps I'll sell them the real idol and become their most valued ally." Caldwell's expression was serene. "I don't take sides, Mr. Hale. I position myself to profit from whoever wins. Surely you understand, you operate the same way." "No," Hale said. "I don't." He shot Rosa. The bullet took her in the leg, dropping her. As she fell, Hale dove sideways, avoiding her return shot. He rolled and came up, gun aimed at Caldwell, who was already running, disappearing into the rocks beyond the canyon rim. Hale cursed and gave chase, leaving Rosa writhing on the ground. He could hear horses ahead. Caldwell had an escape planned, of course. The man planned everything. Hale sprinted through the scrub brush, jumping over rocks, his lungs burning. He caught sight of Caldwell mounting a horse, 2 bodyguards with him. Hale fired, missed, fired again. One of the bodyguards fell. The other bodyguard returned fire, forcing Hale into cover. By the time he could shoot again, Caldwell was riding away at full gallop, heading northwest toward his private rail line. Hale stood there, breathing hard, watching his quarry escape. He'd failed. Caldwell had gotten away, and with him went any chance of finding the real idol. Unless. Hale walked back to where Rosa lay clutching her wounded leg. She glared at him with pure hatred. "You shot me! You were going to shoot me. It seemed fair." Hale knelt beside her. The real sacred jaguar. Where is it? Go to hell. You're bleeding pretty badly. Without medical attention, you might not make it. But if you tell me where the idol is, I'll get you help. Rosa laughed bitterly. You think I'm stupid enough to believe that? I think you're smart enough to realize Caldwell just left you here to die. He's already gone, Rosa. Whatever he promised you, you're not getting it. So you can die for his cause, or you can help me stop him and maybe survive this. Rosa's face was pale from blood loss. She looked toward where Caldwell had disappeared, and something in her expression shifted. The fortress, she said finally. Fort Bravado. Old Imperial stronghold abandoned 5 years ago. Caldwell bought it, uses it as a secure location for valuable items. Where? 70 miles northwest, near the old mining territories. If you're lying, I'm not. What's the point? He left me here. Rosa's voice was bitter. Guess I wasn't as valuable as I thought. Hale stood, torn. He should finish her, eliminate a threat, but she'd given him what he needed, and he'd promised medical attention. He fired 3 shots into the air, a signal. Within minutes, Pueblo warriors appeared, alerted by the gunfire. This woman needs medical help, Hale told them in Spanish. She's wounded, but she has information about the attack. Treat her, question her, do what you think is right. The warriors looked skeptical, but one of them nodded. They'd follow the war chief's orders, whatever those turned out to be. Hale made his way back down into the canyon. The battle was winding down. The remaining mercenaries were either dead, captured, or fleeing. The defenders had held, but the cost was staggering. Bodies were being laid out respectfully. The wounded were being tended. The sacred ground would need purification ceremonies that would take days. Hale found Salazar organizing the rebel survivors. The general's shoulder was bandaged, his face streaked with dirt and blood. Caldwell escaped, Hale reported. Salazar nodded grimly. We captured some of his mercenaries. They're talking. Confirms what we suspected. This was all orchestrated to eliminate competition. It's worse than that. The idol we brought you is a fake. The real one is at Fort Bravado, 70 miles northwest. Salazar absorbed this information with the weary acceptance of a man who'd had too many setbacks. Of course it is, because nothing about this cursed artifact has been straightforward. The chief elder approached, leaning heavily on a carved staff. His clothes were bloodied, but he stood tall, radiating authority even in the aftermath of battle. He spoke, and the young translator conveyed his words. The white industrialist has violated sacred ground, spilled innocent blood, and stolen what belongs to our people. This cannot stand. We agree, Salazar said. We're going after him. Then we will join you. The chief elder's eyes were hard. Not for your revolution, not for your politics, but because he has committed an unforgivable offense, the Pueblo nations will ride to war. Salazar looked stunned. You're sure? Our warriors have fought beside your rebels today. We have bled together, and this Caldwell, he must answer for what he has done. The elder turned to Hale. You, the white tracker, you know where he has gone? I do. Then you will guide us, and when we find him, when we recover what was stolen, we will decide then whether your general's revolution deserves our continued support. It wasn't the alliance Salazar had hoped for. It was built on vengeance, not ideology. But it was enough. When do we leave? Hale asked. We tend our dead first. We honor those who fell. Then we ride. The chief elder's expression was implacable. Caldwell thinks he can hide behind stone walls. He will learn that walls mean nothing when the people's justice comes. The war party assembled over the next hours as dusk settled over the canyon. Pueblo warriors, 200 of them, mounted and armed. Salazar's remaining rebels, maybe 60 fighters, battered but determined. And Hale, the hired gun who'd somehow become central to all of this. They rode out under a sky full of stars, heading northwest toward Fort Bravado and the confrontation that would decide everything. Hale rode near the front, beside Salazar and the Pueblo war chief, a scarred veteran named Takota, who spoke little but missed nothing. You fought well today, Takota said quietly as they rode, for a white man. I try to stay alive, tends to require fighting well. You seek the idol for money? Originally, yes. Now, Hale paused, trying to articulate something he didn't fully understand himself. Now, I'm just tired of watching men like Caldwell treat people like game pieces. Dakota nodded. This I understand. There is honor in the fight, even when the fight begins without honor. They rode through the night and into the next day, pushing hard but not recklessly. The horses needed rest, the fighters needed food. But there was an urgency driving them forward, the knowledge that Caldwell was consolidating his position, that every hour gave him more time to prepare. Scouts ranged ahead, reporting back. No sign of Imperial forces. No sign of Caldwell's mercenaries. Either the industrialist didn't know he was being pursued, or he was confident his fortress could withstand any assault. On the second day of riding, Hale spotted smoke on the horizon. The scouts confirmed it. Fort Bravado, still occupied, fires burning in the courtyards. The fortress sat on a rocky outcropping, commanding views of the surrounding territory. Stone walls 20 feet high, reinforced gates, defensive positions designed by military engineers. It had been abandoned by the Empire because maintaining it cost more than the strategic value warranted, but the structure itself was formidable. The war party made camp 5 miles out, hidden in a canyon where their fires wouldn't be visible. Leaders gathered to discuss strategy. A frontal assault would be suicide, Salazar said, studying a crude map one of the scouts had drawn. Those walls are too strong. We could siege them, one of the Pueblo leaders suggested. Starve them out. Caldwell has supplies. Could take months. We don't have months. The Empire will eventually notice this gathering. Hale studied the map, remembering everything he'd learned about frontier fortresses. There's always a weakness. Water supply, usually. The original builders would have needed access to a well or spring. You think we can poison it? Salazar asked. I think we can use it to get inside. Dakota leaned forward. Explain. Forts this size need significant water. That means either a well in the courtyard or an underground source with access tunnels. If it's the latter, those tunnels are potential entry points. Assuming they're not sealed or guarded, Salazar pointed out. Assuming, but it's better than trying to climb those walls under fire. The War Council debated for hours, considering options, weighing risks. Finally, they agreed on a plan. Risky, dependent on factors they couldn't control, but the best option available. 3 teams. The main force would create a diversion at the front gate, drawing defenders' attention. A small strike team, including Hale, would attempt to infiltrate through the water access tunnels, and a reserve force would wait to exploit whatever opening presented itself. They'd attack at dawn, when defenders would be tired from night watch, but morning relief hadn't fully awakened. Hale checked his weapons for the dozenth time, ensuring everything was ready. 2 revolvers, a knife, spare ammunition, light and mobile. If the tunnel plan worked, he'd be fighting in close quarters where bulk was a liability. Marisol appeared out of the darkness, leading a horse. Hale looked up, surprised. I thought you went to Mexico City. I did. Got bored. Heard about a war party heading northwest and figured you'd be involved. She grinned. Couldn't let you have all the fun. This isn't going to be fun. People are going to die. People have been dying since this started. Might as well be there when it ends. Her expression sobered. My brother's death needs to mean something, Hale. And if taking down Caldwell is what gives it meaning, then I'm in. Hale nodded, understanding. Stay with the reserve force. When we open those gates, you'll know. And if you don't open them? Then I'll be dead and you should run very fast in the opposite direction. They shared a look. 2 people who'd traveled too far down this road to turn back now. As the night deepened, Hale lay on his bedroll staring up at the stars. Tomorrow would be chaos, violence, probably death. He'd signed up for a simple delivery job and somehow ended up leading an assault on a fortress. The old Hale, the one who worked only for money, who never got involved, would have walked away by now. Collected his payment and disappeared. But something had changed. Maybe it was watching Salazar fight for something bigger than himself. Maybe it was seeing the Pueblos defend their sacred ground. Maybe it was just exhaustion from running cons and chasing money. Or maybe for the first time in his life, Lucas Glory Hale had found a cause worth the risk. Dawn came too quickly. The war party moved into position silently, warriors and rebels working together with the coordination of allied forces. The main assault group spread out facing the fortress gates. The reserve force positioned themselves in the rocks to the east. And Hale's infiltration team, just 5 people, including a Pueblo warrior who knew stonework and tunnels, crept toward the base of the outcropping. The scouts had located what they believed was the water access point, a narrow opening partially concealed by fallen rocks on the fortress's blind side. Hale and his team reached it without being detected, though every moment felt like borrowed time. The opening was barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through. The Pueblo warrior went first, testing the passage. He emerged and nodded. It continued inward. One by one, they entered the tunnel. Darkness swallowed them. The air was cool and damp, smelling of stone and earth. Water trickled somewhere ahead. They moved by feel, hands on the walls, testing each step. The tunnel sloped downward, then leveled out. Hale could hear the water more clearly now, flowing, not dripping. An underground stream. Light appeared ahead, faint but enough to navigate by. They emerged into a larger chamber, clearly man-made, where the stream had been channeled into a collection basin. Stone stairs led upward, and at the top of those stairs a guard. He saw them at the same moment they saw him. His mouth opened to shout. Hale's knife took him in the throat. The guard fell silently, dead before he hit the ground. The team froze, listening. No alarm. No sound of approaching reinforcements. They'd made it inside. Hale cleaned his knife and started up the stairs. Above them, Fort Bravado waited. And somewhere in those stone corridors, Victor Caldwell sat with a fortune in jade, believing himself untouchable. He was about to learn otherwise. The fortress was about to fall, and with it, the last piece of an impossible puzzle would finally slot into place. The stairs led them into a storage room filled with barrels and crates. Hale held up a hand, stopping the team. Through the wooden door ahead, he could hear voices, guards making their morning rounds, complaining about the early hour and the quality of the coffee. The Pueblo warrior moved silently to the door and peered through a gap in the planks. He held up 3 fingers. 3 guards, walking away down the corridor. They waited until the footsteps faded, then slipped out into the passage. The fortress interior was better maintained than Hale had expected. Stone floors swept clean, oil lamps lit at regular intervals, the organization of a well-run operation. Caldwell had clearly invested in making this more than just a ruin. Hale's team split up as planned. 2 warriors went to find and open the main gates. Another went to locate the fortress's ammunition stores. Hale and the final warrior headed deeper into the complex, toward what the scouts believed was the central keep where Caldwell would have his command center. They moved through corridors that smelled of lamp oil and stone dust, avoiding patrols through a combination of timing and luck. Twice they had to duck into side rooms as guards passed. Once they nearly ran straight into a servant carrying breakfast trays, but the man was too sleepy to register their presence before they'd vanished around a corner. The central keep was a tower structure, rising above the rest of the fortress. Hale and his companion reached the base and started climbing the spiral staircase. Their footsteps echoed softly despite their efforts at stealth. At the 3rd floor landing, they encountered a locked door. Heavy oak, reinforced with iron bands. A guard station, probably. The warrior produced a thin piece of metal and went to work on the lock. Hale kept watch, gun drawn, every sense alert. Below he could hear the fortress coming to life. More voices, more footsteps. The daily routine beginning. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Inside was a room that looked like a military command center combined with a counting house. Maps covered one wall showing mining territories, railroad routes, and strategic locations. A large desk held ledgers, contracts, and correspondence. But what drew Hale's attention was the safe in the corner, built into the wall, heavy steel, the kind that required either a combination or a lot of explosives to open. "Cover the door," Hale told the warrior. He approached the safe, examining it. No way to open it quietly without the combination. But before he could decide on a next move, a voice spoke from behind them. "I do hope you're not planning to steal anything." Hale spun, gun coming up. Victor Caldwell stood in a doorway Hale hadn't noticed, a private entrance from an adjoining room. The industrialist was impeccably dressed, even at this early hour, and he held a small pistol with the casual confidence of a man who'd used one before. "Mr. Hale, I must say I'm impressed. Getting past my guards, finding your way here, quite the accomplishment." "The gates will be opening any moment now," Hale said. "Your fortress is about to be overrun. Surrender the idol and you might survive this." Caldwell smiled. "Ah, yes, the idol. Still chasing that, are you? Even after all the copies, all the misdirection. You really are persistent." "It's in the safe." "Is it?" Caldwell's expression was amused. "Are you certain?" Hale's finger tightened on the trigger. "Open it." "I don't think so. You see, the moment I touch that safe, a dozen guards will come running. There's an alarm system. Quite ingenious." From outside, a roar went up, the sound of hundreds of voices shouting war cries. The main assault had begun. Hale heard the crash of something heavy hitting the fortress gates, the rattle of gunfire. Caldwell glanced toward the window. "Your army has arrived, I see. Impressive mobilization. Pueblos and rebels working together. I didn't think that was possible. You unified them by attacking their sacred ground." "A miscalculation on my part, I'll admit. I thought it would demoralize them. Instead," Caldwell shrugged. "But it doesn't matter. This fortress has withstood sieges before. It can withstand another." The Pueblo warrior moved toward Caldwell. The industrialist's pistol shifted to track him. "I wouldn't," Caldwell said calmly. Hale needed to keep him talking, needed to buy time for the gates to open. "Why did you do all this? The money? You're already rich." "Money is merely a tool, Mr. Hale. What I want is influence, the ability to shape the future of this territory. The sacred jaguar represents leverage over the Pueblo nations. Whoever controls it controls their political will. With that leverage, I can negotiate mineral rights, railroad access, labor agreements. I can build an empire that makes my current wealth look like pocket change." "You talk about people like they're commodities. Because that's what they are. Labor, votes, military power, all commodities to be bought, sold, and traded." Caldwell's eyes glittered. "You should understand this better than most. You sell your skills to the highest bidder. How is what I do any different? I don't murder children on sacred ground. Collateral damage, regrettable but necessary." Caldwell's tone didn't change, as if he was discussing crop yields. "The world is built by men willing to make hard decisions, men who understand that progress requires sacrifice." The fortress shook. Something had hit the gates hard, a battering ram maybe, or explosives. Shouts echoed through the corridors, the sound of boots running, guards mobilizing. Caldwell's expression tightened slightly. "Well, this has been enlightening, Mr. Hale, but I'm afraid I need to attend to the defense of my property. Perhaps we'll continue this conversation after your army is repelled." "They won't be." "We'll see." Caldwell raised his pistol, aiming at Hale's chest. The Pueblo warrior tensed, preparing to lunge. Hale calculated distances, angles, chances of survival. The private door burst open again. A guard rushed in, out of breath. "Sir, the main gates! They're opening from inside. We've been infiltrated." Caldwell's attention flickered toward the guard for just a fraction of a second. Hale and the warrior moved simultaneously. The warrior threw his knife. Hale fired his revolver. Caldwell dove backward, the knife missing by inches, Hale's bullet splintering the doorframe where his head had been. The guard went for his weapon. Hale shot him, center mass. The man fell. But Caldwell was already gone, disappearing through the private passage. Hale ran after him, the Pueblo warrior right behind. The passage led to a narrow staircase spiraling upward. Hale took the steps 3 at a time, gun ready. He could hear Caldwell above, boots clattering on stone. They emerged onto the fortress's highest tower, an open platform with a commanding view of the entire compound. Below, chaos reigned. The main gates were indeed open, and Pueblo warriors and rebels were pouring through. Caldwell's mercenaries fought back from defensive positions, but they were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Caldwell stood at the tower's edge, breathing hard, his expensive clothes now disheveled. He still held his pistol. "It's over," Hale said, approaching slowly. "Give up the idol. Save whatever honor you have left." Caldwell laughed, a bitter, incredulous sound. "Honor? From a hired gun? That's rich. Where is it, Caldwell? It's not in the safe, is it? Clever. You're absolutely right. It's not. Caldwell's smile was cold. I moved it yesterday. Sent it west with a trusted courier heading for California and a buyer who will pay triple what your rebels could offer. Hale felt his stomach drop. You're lying. Am I? Think about it, Hale. Did you really believe I'd keep my most valuable asset in a fortress I knew might be attacked? I'm a businessman. I hedge my bets. The Pueblo warrior spoke sharply in his own language. Hale didn't need translation to understand the fury in his tone. Even if that's true, Hale said, you're still here, still accountable for what happened at the sacred grounds. Accountable to whom? To you? To them? Caldwell gestured at the battle below. I'll simply leave. I have resources, connections. By the time anyone organizes pursuit, I'll be on a ship to San Francisco. You won't make it off this tower. Won't I? Caldwell backed toward the parapet. You see, Mr. Hale, I always have an exit strategy. He turned and jumped. Hale rushed to the edge, expecting to see Caldwell's body shattered on the stones below. Instead, he saw a rope, pre-positioned, anchored to the tower. Caldwell was already halfway down, descending with practiced ease. At the bottom, horses waited. Of course they did. The man planned everything. Hale aimed his revolver, but Caldwell was moving too fast, using the rope and the tower's curve as cover. By the time Hale could line up a shot, the industrialist had reached the ground and was mounting a horse. The Pueblo warrior grabbed a loose stone and hurled it down. It missed, crashing against the tower wall. Caldwell kicked his horse into motion, heading for a small postern gate on the fortress's eastern side. A gate that was still sealed, still under his mercenaries' control. Hale ran back down the stairs, taking them so fast he nearly fell twice. He had to reach that gate before Caldwell escaped. If the industrialist was telling the truth about the idol already being gone, they needed him alive to find out where. He burst into the main courtyard just as a wave of Pueblo warriors swept past, overwhelming a defensive position. Bodies littered the ground. Smoke from burning structures choked the air. The battle was in its final phase. Caldwell's mercenaries were breaking, surrendering, or fleeing. Hale spotted Salazar directing a group of rebels toward the barracks. General, Caldwell's heading for the east gate. Salazar turned, saw Hale, and immediately started shouting orders. A squad of fighters peeled off, following Hale as he ran toward the eastern wall. They reached the postern gate just as it was swinging open. Caldwell rode through, 2 mercenaries guarding his escape. Beyond the gate was open country and freedom. Stop him! Hale raised his revolver and fired. The shot went high. The mercenaries returned fire, forcing Hale and the others into cover. By the time they could advance, Caldwell was 200 yards out and galloping hard. Hale commandeered a horse from a fallen mercenary and gave chase, 6 rebels and warriors following. The pursuit stretched across the Badlands, horses straining, riders bent low against the wind. Caldwell knew the terrain, taking a route that suggested he'd planned this escape route well in advance. But Hale's horse was fresher, and the gap slowly closed. A mile from the fortress, the chase entered a rocky canyon. Caldwell's horse stumbled on loose stone, and for a moment Hale thought the industrialist would fall. But Caldwell recovered, turning his mount up a narrow trail that climbed the canyon wall. Hale followed, the trail barely wide enough for a horse. Rocks crumbled beneath hooves. One wrong step meant a 50-foot fall. At the top, the trail opened onto a mesa. Caldwell's horse was spent, foam flecking its mouth. The animal could barely manage a trot. Hale's own mount wasn't much better, but it had enough left for a final burst. He closed the distance, riding alongside Caldwell, and threw himself from the saddle. They hit the ground together, rolling through dust and scrub grass. Caldwell came up swinging a rock. Hale blocked it with his forearm, pain lancing through the bone. He countered with a punch that caught Caldwell in the ribs. They fought without grace or style. Brutal, desperate. 2 men who knew only one of them was leaving this mesa alive. Caldwell was stronger than he looked, driven by the fury of a man watching his carefully constructed plans collapse. But Hale had been in more fights than he could count, and his instincts were sharper. Hale landed a combination that dropped Caldwell to one knee. He followed up with a kick that sent the industrialist sprawling. Caldwell tried to crawl away. Hale grabbed him, flipped him over, and pressed his forearm against the man's throat. "Where is it?" Hale demanded. "Where's the real idol?" Caldwell's face was turning red, veins bulging. "California. Courier. Named Stevens. When did he leave?" "Yesterday. Dawn." Hale eased the pressure slightly. "If you're lying, not lying, need to breathe." Hoofbeats announced the arrival of the others: Salazar, Dakota, several warriors and rebels. They formed a circle around the two men on the ground. Hale stood, pulling Caldwell up with him. The industrialist's expensive clothes were torn and dirty, his face bruised. All the polished sophistication was gone, leaving just a man who'd gambled everything and lost. "Bind him," Salazar ordered. Two rebels moved forward with rope. "Wait." Dakota stepped forward, his expression harder than stone. "This man ordered the attack on sacred ground. Pueblo justice demands—" "He has information we need," Hale interrupted. "A courier named Stevens heading to California with the idol. We need Caldwell alive until we verify that." Dakota's jaw clenched, but he nodded slowly. "Then he lives until we recover what was stolen. After that, he faces judgment." Caldwell was bound and thrown over a horse. The party rode back toward Fort Bravado, where the battle had ended. Caldwell's mercenaries who'd survived had surrendered. The fortress was now under rebel and Pueblo control. In the command center, Salazar interrogated captured officers while Hale searched through Caldwell's papers. Most of it was business correspondence, contracts, financial records. But buried in a drawer, Hale found a ledger detailing payments to various couriers and agents. There, an entry from 3 days ago. Payment to J. Stevens for secure transport Western route, $10,000, with another 10 promised upon successful delivery to a buyer in Sacramento. "He wasn't lying," Hale said, showing the ledger to Salazar. "Stevens is real. Left 3 days ago, not yesterday." Caldwell lied about the timing to give his courier more lead time. Salazar studied the entry. 3 days head start. On horseback, that puts him maybe 150 miles west, if he's moving fast. We need to catch him before he reaches California. Once he crosses into U.S. territory and delivers the idol, it's gone forever. Then we ride again. Salazar looked exhausted but determined. "A small, fast group. I'll take my best riders." "I'm going," Hale said. "Obviously, you're the only one who's been tracking this thing from the beginning." Dakota entered the room, his expression grim. "We found something. The safe. We opened it." He placed a wrapped bundle on the table. Salazar unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a jade statue, beautifully carved, exquisitely detailed, absolutely, unmistakably fake. Salazar stared at it, then started laughing, a sound somewhere between amusement and despair. Of course it's another fake. Why would anything about this be straightforward? How many copies did he make? Hale wondered aloud. Does it matter? Dakota's voice was hard. The real one is still out there. This changes nothing. A rebel soldier entered, saluting. "General, one of the prisoners is asking to speak with you. Says he has information to trade." "Bring him in." The prisoner was a mercenary officer, probably one of Caldwell's senior commanders. His hands were bound, but his expression was calculating. "I can tell you exactly where Stevens is going," the mercenary said without preamble. "What the delivery route is, where the exchanges happen. But I want immunity and safe passage to the border." "Why would you betray your employer?" Salazar asked. "Because Caldwell isn't my employer anymore. He's a prisoner who can't pay what he owes me. I'm a professional, General. When a contract ends, I move on." The mercenary shrugged. "Besides, that idol's brought nothing but trouble. I'd rather be alive and broke than dead and loyal." Salazar looked at Dakota, then at Hale. They held a silent conversation. Was this trustworthy? Did they have a choice? "Tell us what you know," Salazar said finally. "If it's good information, you get your immunity." The mercenary smiled. "Stevens is heading for a rendezvous point at Red Creek Station, about 100 miles west. It's a way station used for transferring goods that need to disappear. He'll arrive there in 2 days, swap horses, and continue on to Sacramento. The buyer, some railroad magnate, has agents waiting to take possession." "How do you know all this?" Because I helped plan it. Caldwell wanted multiple contingencies, multiple routes. This was his primary escape plan. Get the idol out fast, then follow the money once things cooled down. Hale studied the mercenary, trying to read deception. The man seemed genuine, but then again, professional liars always did. Red Creek Station, Hale said. I know it. Small operation, mostly legitimate, but will handle gray market goods for the right price. It's run by a woman named Cordelia Wells. That's the one. The mercenary nodded. Stevens will arrive afternoon of day after tomorrow. If you move fast, you can beat him there. Salazar made his decision. Give this man food, water, and a horse. He rides north, stays out of Mexican territory. If I see him again, the deal's off. The mercenary was led away. Salazar turned to the others. We leave within the hour. 20 riders, the fastest horses we have. We reach Red Creek before Stevens, we set up an ambush, we take the idol. And if it's another fake, one of the rebel officers asked, then we keep hunting until we find the real one, or we die trying. Salazar's voice left no room for argument. This ends at Red Creek Station, one way or another. Preparations moved quickly. Horses were selected, supplies packed. The main force would remain at Fort Bravado, securing the fortress and guarding the prisoners, including Caldwell, who would be held until they verified whether his information about Stevens was accurate. Marisol appeared as Hale was checking his saddle. She'd fought in the battle, had a cut across her cheek and powder burns on her hands. You're going after Stevens, she said. I am. Room for one more? Hale looked at her, this woman who'd lost her brother, who'd been betrayed and shot at and nearly killed a dozen times. She should want nothing more than to walk away, to take her share and disappear. But he saw in her eyes the same stubborn refusal to quit that he felt himself. Can you ride hard for 2 days straight? Try me. Then saddle up. The pursuit party assembled in the fortress courtyard. 22 riders, rebels, Pueblo warriors, Hale, and Marisol. Salazar addressed them briefly. We ride for Red Creek Station. We ride hard and we ride fast. The future of the rebellion, the honor of the Pueblo nations, everything we fought for. It all comes down to intercepting one courier with one artifact. Fail, and we've lost. Succeed, and we might actually win this war. No cheers, just grim nods of understanding. These were fighters who'd seen too much death to celebrate prematurely. They rode out as the sun climbed toward noon, leaving Fort Bravado behind. The fortress had cost them dearly, good people dead, others wounded. But it had also given them something valuable, a chance. One final chance to make all the sacrifice mean something. The country they crossed was harsh and beautiful. Mesas and canyons, scrub brush and stone, painted in shades of red and gold by the afternoon light. They rode in formation, scouts ranging ahead, everyone alert for imperial patrols or bandits or any of the 1,000 dangers the frontier offered. That first night they made camp in a canyon, cold camp with no fires. Everyone ate jerky and hardtack, checked weapons, tried to sleep knowing tomorrow would be worse. Hale sat with his back against a rock, cleaning his revolver by moonlight. Dakota approached and sat nearby. You have fought well for a white man, the war chief said. Many times now, you have had the chance to take the idol for yourself, to sell it to the highest bidder. Yet you have not. The contracts with Salazar, I honor my contracts. Is that all? Dakota's eyes were knowing. Or have you found something worth more than money? Hale was silent for a long moment. I've spent my life running from causes, from commitments. Easier that way. Less complicated. And now? Now I'm riding a half-dead horse through the desert to ambush a courier, probably going to get shot at again, all for a statue I'll never profit from. Hale smiled slightly. So either I've found something worth more than money, or I've just gone completely insane. Perhaps both can be true. Dakota stood. Sleep, Tracker. Tomorrow, we ride harder. The second day tested everyone. They pushed the horses to the edge of collapse, walking them periodically to prevent permanent damage but never stopping for long. The sun beat down mercilessly. Water ran low. But they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that Stevens had days of lead time and every hour mattered. Red Creek Station appeared on the horizon late afternoon of the second day. It sat in a shallow valley where two seasonal streams met, Hence the name, though only one stream still ran regularly. A cluster of buildings, main house, stable, storage sheds. A way station for travelers, with rooms to rent and fresh horses to buy. The perfect place to swap out a tired mount and continue west. Salazar called a halt 2 miles out. The party took cover in a rocky outcropping while scouts crept forward to assess the situation. They returned an hour later with their report. Red Creek Station looked normal. A few travelers, some local ranch hands, the owner going about her business. No sign of Stevens yet, but he could arrive any time. We set up positions now, Salazar decided. Cover all approaches. When Stevens arrives, we take him quietly if possible. If not, he didn't need to finish the sentence. They moved into position as the sun set, spreading out around the station. Hale took a spot in the rocks north of the main building, with clear sightlines to the approach road and the stable. Marisol positioned herself on the opposite side. Pueblo warriors covered the other directions. Salazar and his rebels held the center, ready to respond wherever needed. And then they waited. Night fell. Lights appeared in Red Creek's windows. A few guests retired to their rooms. The stable hands finished their work and headed to the bunkhouse. The owner, Cordelia Wells, a woman in her 50s with the weathered face of frontier life, locked the main house and extinguished most of the lamps. The hours crawled past. Midnight came and went. Hale fought to stay alert, his body protesting after 2 days of brutal riding with minimal rest. False alarm just before dawn. A rider approached from the east, but it was just a ranch hand heading home after a night in town. The sun rose, painting the desert in pastels. Still no Stevens. Had the mercenary lied? Had Stevens changed his route? Had they come all this way for nothing? Then, mid-morning, dust appeared on the western road. A single rider, moving at a moderate pace, leading a pack horse. Hale's hand went to his revolver. Around the station he knew the others were tensing, preparing. The rider approached. Hale got his first clear look. Middle-aged man, nondescript clothes, the kind of person you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting. Perfect for a courier. Stevens dismounted at the stable, calling out for the hostler. While he waited, he stretched, working out the kinks from long hours in the saddle. The pack horse's saddlebags looked heavy. Hale watched as Stevens negotiated with the hostler for fresh mounts. Money changed hands. The hostler led away Stevens' tired horses and brought out 2 fresh ones. Stevens opened his saddlebags, transferring items to the new pack horse. Hale strained to see what he was moving. There, a wrapped bundle, roughly the right size and shape. This was it. Salazar gave the signal, a bird call that didn't quite sound natural. The ambush sprung. Rebels and warriors emerged from cover simultaneously, surrounding the stable. Stevens' hand went to his gun, but froze when he saw how outnumbered he was. "Don't move," Salazar commanded, rifle aimed at the courier. "You're carrying something that belongs to us." Stevens' face showed carefully controlled fear. "I don't know what you're talking about." The package. The wrapped bundle you just transferred. That's what we want." "That's private property. I'm a licensed courier." "Open it. Now!" Stevens' eyes darted around, calculating odds, finding none. Slowly, he reached into the pack horse's saddlebag and pulled out the wrapped bundle. He unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a jade statue, the sacred jaguar of Tenochtitlan. Even in the morning light, even covered in dust from travel, it was magnificent. The craftsmanship was clearly superior to all the copies they'd seen. The jade seemed to pulse with inner light. The jaguar's obsidian eyes held ancient wisdom. This was real. Finally, after all the chases and betrayals and death, they'd found it. Dakota stepped forward, approaching the statue with reverence. He spoke softly in his own language, a prayer maybe, or an acknowledgement of something sacred finally returned. He reached out and touched the jade. Then his expression changed. His fingers traced the carving more carefully. He lifted the statue, testing its weight, turned it over, examining the base. When he looked up, his face was a mask of controlled fury. "This is also a fake." The words hit like a physical blow. Salazar stared. Hale felt his stomach drop. "That's impossible," Stevens sputtered. "I was told—" "You were told lies." Dakota's voice could have cut steel. "This is well made, better than the others. But it is not the sacred jaguar. The weight is wrong. The proportions are slightly off. And here, he pointed to a detail on the base. This mark. It's from a modern tool, not ancient carving. Stevens looked genuinely shocked. But Caldwell played everyone, Hale said, the pieces finally falling into place. The whole thing, every step. He never had the real idol. He's been moving fakes around, watching us chase them, probably laughing the entire time. Then where's the real one? Marisol demanded. No one had an answer. They'd captured the courier, seized the package, done everything right, and still come up empty. The sacred jaguar, the real one, was still out there somewhere, lost in the chaos of the greatest con the frontier had ever seen. The silence that followed Dakota's pronouncement was crushing. 22 riders had crossed 100 miles of brutal terrain, risked everything on intercepting this courier, and it was all for nothing. Another fake. Another lie in a chain of lies that seemed to stretch endlessly. Stevens stood frozen, still holding the counterfeit statue. I swear I didn't know. Caldwell paid me to transport this to Sacramento, said it was worth a fortune. You thought you were smuggling something valuable, Hale finished, which you were, just not what you believed. Salazar lowered his rifle, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Then we go back. We interrogate Caldwell until he tells us the truth. He won't, Hale said quietly. Men like Caldwell, they plan for interrogation. He'll feed us more lies, send us chasing more ghosts. This whole thing, the attack on the sacred grounds, the fortress, Stevens, it's all misdirection. Then what do we do? Marisol asked. Marisol, we can't give up now. Hale's mind was working, turning over everything they knew. The original theft from Ochoa, the chain of possession, the fakes circulating, Caldwell's elaborate schemes. Something wasn't adding up, some piece of the puzzle he was missing. Wait, he said slowly. What if we've been asking the wrong question? Everyone turned to look at him. We've been asking where the idol is. Who has it now? But what if it never left its original location? Hale started pacing, ideas crystallizing. Ochoa had it 2 months ago. Then it was supposedly stolen. But what if it wasn't? What if Ochoa faked the theft? Why would he do that? Salazar asked. To protect it. Think about it. The moment people knew he had the real idol, he became a target. Everyone would be hunting him, but if he spread rumors that it was stolen, created a few convincing fakes, and sent them into circulation, Hale's eyes widened. He could keep the real one safe while everyone chased shadows. Dakota stepped forward. Then where's Ochoa now? Dead, one of the rebels said. Killed in a border skirmish 3 weeks ago. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows he died, Hale corrected. But who verified the body? Who confirmed it was actually him? The rebels looked at each other, uncertain. The Pueblo warriors conferred in their own language. Finally, one of Salazar's officers spoke up. There was a body, burned badly in the skirmish. Ochoa's men identified it as him, buried it with military honors. His men identified a burned corpse as their leader, Hale said. Convenient. Almost too convenient. Marisol caught on. You think Ochoa faked his own death? I think it's exactly the kind of play a paranoid warlord would make. Stage your own death, let everyone think you're gone, wait for the chaos to die down, then resurface somewhere with a new identity and sell the idol when the heat's off. This is speculation, Salazar pointed out. We have no proof. No, but we have something better. Hale turned to Stevens. Where were you supposed to deliver this fake? Who was the buyer? Stevens hesitated, loyalty to his contract warring with self-preservation. Self-preservation won. A man named Thompson, real estate speculator from Sacramento. I was supposed to meet him at a hotel there, hand over the package, collect the final payment. And this Thompson, you've met him before? Once. About 3 weeks ago in San Francisco. He made the arrangements, paid the deposit. Describe him. Stevens thought for a moment. Middle-aged, maybe 50, scarred face like he'd been in a fire, missing 2 fingers on his left hand, spoke with an accent, Spanish, maybe Mexican. Hale and Salazar exchanged glances. Salazar's face had gone pale. Ochoa had scars from a fire. the general said quietly, "and he lost 2 fingers in a knife fight years ago. Everyone who knew him knew about those fingers." "Then Thompson is Ochoa," Hale concluded. "He faked his death, created a new identity, and he's been orchestrating this entire circus from the shadows. Caldwell thought he was the puppet master, but Ochoa was pulling everyone's strings." "Including Caldwell's," Marisol added. "The industrialist probably thought he was buying the real idol from one of his agents, never realizing he was being played." The implications settled over the group like a cold wind. They'd been chasing an artifact that had never actually been in circulation. The real sacred jaguar had been with Ochoa the entire time, hidden while he watched everyone else tear each other apart trying to find it. "Sacramento," Salazar said grimly. "We ride for Sacramento." "That's another 3 days minimum," one of the officers objected. "The horses are exhausted, the men are exhausted, and we'd be crossing into U.S. territory if the American authorities catch us. Then we'll deal with it, but we're not stopping now." Dakota shook his head. "Your men and horses cannot make that ride. Not without rest. You will arrive broken and useless." "Then what do you suggest?" The war chief was silent for a moment, then spoke in measured tones. "A small group, 3, maybe 4 riders, fast horses, light packs. They can reach Sacramento in 2 days, intercept this Thompson before he realizes we know." "I'm going," Hale said immediately. "As am I," Salazar added. Dakota nodded. "And I will go, to verify the idol when we find it, to ensure it is returned to my people." They looked at each other, 3 men who'd started as adversaries, united now by a common purpose. "I'm coming too," Marisol said. "Don't even try to talk me out of it." Hale started to object, then saw the steel in her eyes. She'd earned her place on this hunt. "Fine, 4 riders," Salazar addressed the rest of the group. "Lieutenant Vargas, no, he died at the canyon." The general's face flickered with pain. "Captain Reyes, you're in command. Take the men back to Fort Bravado. Secure the fortress, guard the prisoners, wait for our return. And if you don't return, then the idol is lost and the rebellion dies with us. But make Caldwell pay for what he did. That much, at least, we can promise the Pueblos." Fresh horses were procured from Red Creek Station. Cordelia Wells was willing to trade once she understood the situation, though she made it clear she wanted nothing to do with whatever trouble these people were bringing. Food and water were packed, weapons checked. Within an hour, the 4 riders were heading west while the rest of the party turned back east. The country changed as they rode. Less desert, more grassland, the terrain gradually shifting as they approached California. They rode through that first day and into the night, stopping only when the horses absolutely required rest. A few hours of sleep, then back in the saddle before dawn. Hale's body protested every mile. His legs ached from days of riding. His back was a constant knot of pain, but he pushed through it, driven by the knowledge that they were close. Finally, after weeks of chasing shadows, they were hunting the real thing. On the second day, they encountered their first problem, a U.S. Army patrol near the border. 4 soldiers on routine patrol, checking for smugglers and bandits. The sergeant in charge looked them over with suspicion. "You folks are a long way from anywhere. What's your business in California?" Salazar, whose Spanish accent was thick, let Hale do the talking. "Heading to Sacramento," Hale said easily. "Business venture. My partners and I are looking at mining opportunities." "Uh-huh." The sergeant's eyes lingered on Dakota. "And the Indian?" "Scout. Knows the territory. You got papers, letters of transit?" Hale had anticipated this. He pulled out a collection of documents, some legitimate, some forgeries he'd acquired over the years, all impressive looking enough to satisfy a border patrol that didn't look too closely. The sergeant examined them, then handed them back. "All right, but there's been reports of Mexican rebels operating in the territory. You see anything suspicious, you report it. Understood?" "Absolutely, Sergeant. We're law-abiding citizens." The patrol rode off. Once they were out of earshot, Marisol let out a breath she'd been holding. That was too close. "It'll get worse the deeper we go," Hale said, "but we're committed now." They reached Sacramento late afternoon of the second day. The city was bigger than Hale remembered. Gold Rush money had transformed it from a frontier outpost into something approaching civilization. Buildings lined paved streets. Merchants hawked goods from storefronts. Steam whistles from riverboats on the Sacramento River announced arrivals and departures. Finding one man in this chaos would be nearly impossible without a starting point. Stevens said a hotel, Salazar recalled. Which one? They split up, Hale and Marisol checking the upscale establishments while Salazar and Dakota covered the mid-range options. After 2 hours of showing Stevens' description to desk clerks and bribing information out of bellhops, Marisol got a hit. The Grand Sacramento Hotel, she told Hale. A man matching Thompson's description checked in 3 days ago. Room 307. Paid in cash, keeps to himself. They reunited with Salazar and Dakota in an alley behind a general store, planning their approach. We can't just storm a hotel room, Salazar said. Too public. Too many witnesses. We watch him, Hale suggested. Wait for him to leave. Follow him somewhere private. And if he doesn't leave, if he's waiting for Stevens to arrive with the package, then we have to go to him. Hale looked at the others. I'll go in alone, less suspicious. I'll verify he's Ochoa, confirm he has the idol. Then I'll signal you. Too dangerous, Dakota said. If he recognizes you, he won't. We've never met face to face, and I'm good at this. After some debate, they agreed. Hale would enter the hotel as a guest, make his way to the 3rd floor, and assess the situation. If things went wrong, the others would be watching the exits. The Grand Sacramento Hotel lived up to its name. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, the kind of establishment that catered to the new California elite. Hale, still dusty from 2 days of hard riding, drew some looks but money smoothed over any concerns. He paid for a room on the 3rd floor, 2 doors down from 307. Once in his room, he stood at the window and gave a subtle signal to the others watching from across the street. Then he left his room and walked down the hall, listening at doors. Most rooms were quiet. A few had occupants. He could hear muffled conversations, the rustle of newspapers. Room 3? 07 was silent. Hale knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Mr. Thompson? Message from the front desk. Still nothing. Hale tried the door handle. Locked, but it was a simple mechanism. He produced a thin piece of metal and went to work. 30 seconds later, the lock clicked. He drew his revolver and eased the door open. The room was empty, not just unoccupied. Empty. No luggage, no personal effects. The bed was made, the surfaces clean. Either Thompson had checked out, or he'd never actually stayed here. Hale cursed under his breath. They'd been played again. Thompson/Ochoa had used the hotel as a misdirection, probably suspecting someone might track him. He could be anywhere in the city, or already gone, heading for some other destination. Hale was about to leave when something caught his eye. A piece of paper on the desk, partially visible under the blotter. He pulled it out. It was a receipt from a warehouse company, Carter & Sons Storage, Dock District. Carter & Sons. Dated yesterday. A 6-month lease on Unit 23. Why would Thompson need storage space? Unless he was keeping something there he didn't want in his hotel room. Something valuable that required security. Hale left the hotel and rejoined the others. They made their way to the dock district as evening fell. The area was industrial. Warehouses, shipping offices, the constant activity of commerce. Carter & Sons Storage was a nondescript building among many, with a board guard at the front entrance. We need access to Unit 23, Hale told the guard, offering a generous bribe. The guard pocketed the money. Rented to a Mr. Thompson 3 days ago, paid cash for 6 months. You friends of his? Business associates. He asked us to check on something for him. The guard led them through rows of storage units. Unit 23 was in the back corner, secured with a heavy padlock. The guard unlocked it and gestured inside. 15 minutes, then I lock up for the night. He walked away, leaving them alone. Hale entered the unit. It was small, maybe 10 feet square, empty except for a wooden crate in the center. The crate was about 3 feet on each side, sealed with nails. Salazar produced a knife and they pried it open. Inside, packed in straw, was a collection of items, ledgers, maps, personal effects, and wrapped in oilcloth at the bottom. Dakota lifted it out carefully, unwrapped it. The sacred jaguar of Tenochtitlan. Real this time. Unmistakable. The jade was perfect, the carving exquisite, the weight and proportions exactly right. The obsidian eyes seemed to glow in the lamplight. "Finally," Salazar breathed. Dakota held the statue reverently, speaking softly in his own language. After a moment, he looked up, and there were tears in his eyes. "This is it. This is real. I can feel it. The connection to my ancestors, to the old ways." He turned to Salazar. "Your revolution has its symbol, General, and my people have our heritage returned. Then we take it and go." Before Thompson realizes, a voice from the doorway cut him off. "Before I realize you've stolen my property?" They spun around. A man stood silhouetted in the entrance, middle-aged, scarred face, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. Behind him, 4 armed men with the look of professional killers. Ochoa, or Thompson, or whatever name he was using now. "I had a feeling someone would figure it out eventually," Ochoa said, stepping into the unit. "I just didn't expect it to be you, General. I thought you'd be dead by now." "Disappointed?" Salazar's hand moved toward his weapon. "Don't." One of Ochoa's men raised a rifle. "You're outgunned and trapped. Any sudden moves, and you all die." They were trapped. The storage unit had only one exit, and Ochoa's men blocked it. No windows, no other options. "How did you know we'd come here?" Hale asked, stalling. "I didn't, but I've had men watching this place since I rented it, just in case. When the guard reported visitors asking about Unit 23, I knew someone had tracked me down." Ochoa smiled. "You're quite good, Mr. Hale. All those fakes I put in circulation, all the misdirection, you saw through it eventually. You've been playing everyone from the start. Caldwell thought he was running the show." "Caldwell is an arrogant fool who believes money makes him clever. I let him think he was in control while I manipulated events from the shadows." Ochoa gestured to the idol in Dakota's hands. "That artifact is worth more than all of Caldwell's industrial empire. Whoever controls it controls the pueblos. And whoever controls the pueblos controls the future of northern Mexico." "So why sell it?" Marisol asked. "Why not use it yourself?" "Because I'm not a revolutionary or a visionary. I'm a businessman. I saw an opportunity to profit from chaos, so I created more chaos. Now I'm selling to the highest bidder and disappearing with enough money to live like a king for the rest of my life." "The buyer," Hale said. "Who is it?" "You'll never meet them. But they represent interests that make Caldwell look like a street vendor. Foreign powers who want influence in North America. They're willing to pay a fortune for political leverage." Salazar stepped forward, ignoring the rifles pointed at him. "You're Mexican. You're selling out your own people." "I have no people, General. I have no loyalty except to myself." Ochoa's expression hardened. "Now, put the idol back in the crate, slowly." Dakota didn't move. "No. I wasn't asking. Shoot me if you must, but I will not surrender what belongs to my ancestors." The moment stretched taut. Ochoa's men tensed, fingers on triggers. Hal calculated angles and chances, finding nothing good. If shooting started in this confined space, they'd all die. Then Marisol moved. She grabbed a handful of straw from the crate and threw it at the nearest lamp. The flame caught instantly, dried straw erupting into fire. The storage unit filled with smoke. Chaos erupted. Ochoa's men fired, but their shots went wild in the sudden confusion. Hale dove for cover behind the crate. Salazar tackled one of the gunmen. Dakota protected the idol with his body. Hale came up shooting, his revolver barking twice. One of Ochoa's men went down. Return fire splintered the crate inches from Hale's head. The fire was spreading fast, flames climbing the wooden walls. Smoke choked the air. They had maybe seconds before the entire unit became an inferno. Salazar grappled with his opponent, trying to get the man's rifle. They slammed into the burning wall, both cursing. Marisol had her pistol out, firing at shapes in the smoke. Hale saw Ochoa retreating toward the door, abandoning his men. He couldn't let the warlord escape. Not after everything. He charged through the smoke, tackling Ochoa from behind. They crashed into the hallway outside the unit, rolling across concrete. Ochoa was stronger than he looked, fueled by desperation. He got a hand on Hale's throat, squeezing. Hale broke the grip with a headbutt that left both of them dazed. He staggered to his feet. Ochoa did the same, pulling a knife. They circled each other, the burning storage unit behind them. Smoke poured into the hallway. Someone was screaming. Gunfire continued inside. Ochoa lunged with the knife. Hale sidestepped, grabbed the man's wrist, and used his momentum to slam him face first into the wall. The knife clattered away. Hale pinned Ochoa, one arm twisted behind his back. "It's over. Your men are dead or dying. The idol is gone. You lost." Ochoa laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You think this ends with me? There are a dozen other players in this game. Caldwell was one. I was another. But there are more. Always more. That idol will never rest. It'll keep changing hands, keep causing death, until everyone who touches it is destroyed. Maybe, but you won't be around to see it." Hale dragged Ochoa back toward the burning unit where Takota was emerging with the idol clutched to his chest. Salazar followed, supporting Marisol, who'd taken a bullet in the shoulder but was conscious and walking. The storage facility's alarm bells were ringing now. Guards were running toward them. In the distance, fire wagon bells announced the approaching brigade. "We need to leave," Salazar said. "Now." They fled the warehouse as flames consumed the building behind them. Ochoa's remaining men either burned or escaped separately. Hale didn't care which. They had what they came for. They made it back to their horses and rode out of Sacramento as night fell. Behind them, smoke rose into the darkening sky. Ahead, the long ride back to Mexico waited. Marisol's wound needed treatment, but she insisted she could make it. They found a doctor in a small town 20 miles south, a man willing to treat a gunshot without asking questions for the right price. While Marisol recovered, the others rested and planned their next moves. Ochoa was bound and under constant guard. He'd stopped talking, sitting in sullen silence, watching his captors with hate-filled eyes. "What do we do with him?" Salazar asked Hale quietly. "That's not my decision. He violated Pueblo's sacred ground. Takota's people get first claim. And then? Then I imagine he faces revolutionary justice for his crimes. If he lives that long." They were 5 days riding back to Fort Bravado, taking it slower because of Marisol's injury. The return journey was tense, everyone expecting ambush, imperial patrols, or some new disaster. But the frontier was quiet, as if exhausted by all the violence it had witnessed. Fort Bravado came into view on the 6th day, the stone walls visible from miles away. As they approached, they could see the changes. Pueblo banners flew alongside rebel flags. Warriors and rebels worked side by side, repairing battle damage. The fortress had become a symbol of the alliance forged in blood. The lookout spotted them and spread the word. By the time they rode through the gates, a crowd had gathered. Captain Reyes pushed through, relief evident on his face. "General, we'd begun to worry." He saw the idol in Takota's arms and stopped. "Is that?" "The real sacred jaguar," Salazar confirmed. "Finally!" A cheer went up from the crowd. Rebels embraced each other. Pueblo warriors raised their weapons in salute. After weeks of chasing shadows, they'd succeeded. Word spread through the fortress like wildfire. The Pueblo elders who'd remained behind emerged from the council chamber, their faces solemn but eyes bright with hope. They approached Takota, who carefully presented the idol. The chief elder took it with trembling hands, studying it in the sunlight. He spoke at length in his native tongue, his voice carrying across the courtyard. The translation came later. He was confirming its authenticity, describing the sacred markings that only the true artifact bore, acknowledging the return of what had been lost. Then the elder turned to Salazar. "You have fulfilled your promise, General. Against impossible odds, you have recovered what was stolen. The Pueblo nations honor this. Does this mean? It means we will consider your revolution with open hearts. We make no promises of what that consideration will yield, but you have earned the right to be heard." It wasn't a full commitment, but it was more than Salazar had dared hope for. The general bowed deeply, showing respect. The celebration lasted into the night. Food was shared, stories told, alliances strengthened. Hale found himself sitting with Salazar and Takota, watching the festivities with the detachment of men who'd been through too much to fully relax. "What will you do now?" Salazar asked Hale. "The contract is fulfilled. You're free to go." Hale sipped from a cup of surprisingly good whiskey. "I don't know. Part of me wants to disappear, find that quiet farm, stop getting shot at. And the other part? The other part knows that quiet would drive me insane after about a week. Salazar laughed. You could stay. The revolution needs good men, men who can think as well as fight. I'm not a revolutionary. Perhaps not, but you're not just a mercenary anymore either. Whether you admit it or not, you've chosen a side. Hale didn't respond, but he knew Salazar was right. Something had changed during this hunt. He'd started as a hired gun chasing money. But somewhere along the way, watching Salazar fight for his cause, seeing the pueblos defend their sacred ground, witnessing people die for something bigger than themselves, he'd stopped being neutral. Dakota stood, preparing to return to his people. The tracker has honor, he said to Hale. If you ever need the friendship of the Pueblo nations, you have it. I'm not sure I deserve that. Honor is not about deserving, it is about choosing, again and again, to do what is right, even when easier paths exist. Dakota placed a hand on Hale's shoulder. You chose correctly many times on this journey. That is all any man can do. After Dakota left, Salazar pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to Hale. What's this? The deed to the Esperanza silver mine, as promised in our contract. The revolution controls that territory now, and I'm a man of my word. Hale opened the envelope, seeing the official-looking documents inside. The mine was worth a fortune if it could be properly developed. Combined with the gold he'd already been paid, he was a rich man. And one more thing. Salazar produced a second, smaller envelope. Payment from the Pueblo elders. They insisted on contributing to your fee, as thanks for recovering their sacred artifact. Hale opened it, finding more gold certificates than he could spend in 5 years. He stared at the wealth in his hands, feeling strangely empty. This should make you happy, Salazar observed. You're set for life. It should, so why doesn't it feel like enough? Because you've discovered what we revolutionaries learned long ago, that some things matter more than money, purpose, meaning, being part of something larger than yourself. Salazar stood, preparing to return to the festivities. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? Hale sat alone for a while, thinking about the general's words. He'd spent his entire adult life avoiding commitment, treating every job as temporary, never letting himself care about outcomes beyond his payment. But this job had been different. The people had been different. And somewhere in the dust and blood and impossible odds, Lucas Glory Hale had found something he hadn't known he was looking for. Marisol found him an hour later, her arm in a sling, but looking better than she had any right to after being shot. Brooding? She asked, sitting down beside him. Contemplating. Same thing. What about? Whether I'm too old to change who I am. Marisol smiled. You're asking the wrong question. The question isn't whether you can change. You already have. The question is what you do next. And what are you doing next? Mexico City, I think. Maybe use some of my earnings to start a legitimate business, something that doesn't involve getting shot at. She paused. Or maybe I'll stick around, see what the revolution looks like when it's actually winning. Depends on my mood. You know it'll be dangerous. The Empire won't give up. Of course not. But nothing worth doing is safe. She stood, offered him her good hand. Come on, there's a party happening, and we actually earned it this time. Hale let her pull him to his feet. They walked back toward the celebration, where rebels and warriors and ordinary people were choosing to hope, choosing to fight, choosing to believe that tomorrow could be better than today. 3 days later, the Pueblo elders held their final council. Hale wasn't present for the deliberations. Those were sacred and private. But when the elders emerged and made their announcement, the entire fortress heard. The Pueblo nations would join the revolution. Not fully, not unconditionally, but enough. 2,000 warriors initially, with more to follow if the rebels proved worthy of the alliance. It was a beginning. General Salazar accepted with tears in his eyes. The rebellion had been given a lifeline, a real chance at survival. That evening, as preparations began for the Pueblo warriors' march south to join rebel forces in the field, Hale made his decision. He found Salazar in the command center, studying maps of imperial positions. I'm staying, Hale said without preamble. Salazar looked up, surprised. For how long? I don't know. Until this is over, maybe. Or until I get killed. Whichever comes first. Hale gestured to the maps. You need someone who thinks like your enemies. Someone who can predict their moves, spot their traps. Someone who spent his life working the angles. And that's you? That's me. I'm not a rebel. I don't believe in all the revolutionary ideals, but I believe in people fighting for something bigger than themselves. And I believe Caldwell and men like him need to lose. Salazar extended his hand. Welcome to the revolution, Mr. Hale. They shook, sealing a new partnership. Not employer and contractor this time, but something closer to equals. Over the following weeks, Fort Bravado became a hub of activity. Pueblo warriors and rebel soldiers trained together, learning each other's tactics. Supply lines were established. Intelligence networks expanded. The revolution, which had been dying just months ago, was reborn. Hale took on the role of strategic advisor, using his knowledge of the criminal underworld and frontier politics to help Salazar navigate the complex web of alliances and enmities. It was different from his old work, harder in some ways, more rewarding in others. Marisol stayed too, becoming a liaison between the rebels and the various criminal networks that could provide supplies, information, and covert support. She and Hale worked together often, their partnership evolving into something like friendship. Victor Caldwell was tried by a combined court of rebel officers and Pueblo elders. The evidence against him was overwhelming: the attack on sacred ground, the massacre of civilians, the years of exploitation and manipulation. He was found guilty and executed, his industrial empire seized and redistributed. Ochoa met a similar fate, though his trial was shorter. The Pueblos had their own justice for violators of sacred ground, and it was swift. With the real sacred jaguar restored and the fakes destroyed, the artifact was placed in a secure location known only to the Pueblo elders. It would be brought out for ceremonies and councils, used to inspire and unify, but never again would it be treated as a commodity to be bought and sold. 6 months after the events at Fort Bravado, Hale stood on the fortress walls at sunset, watching the territory spread out below. In the distance, smoke from cooking fires marked rebel encampments. Closer in, Pueblo families had begun settling near the fortress, creating a mixed community of warriors and civilians. The empire still held most of Mexico. The war was far from over. There would be more battles, more bloodshed, more impossible situations that required impossible solutions. But for the first time in his life, Lucas Glory Hale was part of something that mattered. He'd gone from chasing money to chasing meaning, and discovered that the latter was far more valuable than the former. Salazar joined him on the wall, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might want this. Thanks. Hale took the cup. How'd the council meeting go? Well, the Pueblos are committing another 1,000 warriors to the southern campaign, and we've received word that 3 more territories are considering joining the revolution. Salazar smiled. It's actually working, Hale. We might actually win this thing. Don't get ahead of yourself. The empire's not done yet. I know, but for the first time I can see a path to victory. A real path, not just desperate hope. They stood in companionable silence, watching the sun sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. Do you regret it? Salazar asked eventually, taking that first contract. If you'd known how complicated it would become, I'd have done it anyway, Hale said. Maybe not for the same reasons, maybe not as a pure business transaction. But yes, I'd have done it. Why? Hale thought about the question, about everything that had happened since that desperate meeting in a canyon where a dying general had offered him an impossible job. Because impossible jobs, he said finally, echoing the words he'd spoken all those months ago, just take a little longer. And because some things are worth more than money, I just needed someone to remind me of that. Salazar raised his cup. 2 impossible jobs. And the fool's brave enough to take them, Hale added, touching his cup to Salazar's. They drank as the sun set on the Mexican frontier. 2 men who'd started as strangers and become something like brothers through fire and blood and shared purpose. The revolution continued. The war raged on. The future remained uncertain. But in a land torn by violence and greed, where armies clashed and empires schemed, the smartest man in the West had finally learned something no amount of money could teach. That honor mattered. That causes were worth fighting for. That sometimes the most valuable thing you could do was stand with people who believed in something bigger than themselves, even when the odds were impossible and the outcome uncertain. Lucas Glory Hale had chased an idol across hundreds of miles, through betrayals and battles and a dozen close calls with death. He'd found it, delivered it, and helped change the course of a war. But more than that, he'd found something he never knew he was looking for. A reason to stay. A purpose worth the risk. A place where his skills mattered not for profit, but for principle. The treasure hunt was over. The sacred jaguar was home. But for Lucas Hale, the real journey was just beginning. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, he smiled, knowing that wherever that journey led, it would be worth every step. The frontier stretched endlessly before him, beautiful and brutal, full of danger and possibility. And for the first time in his life, he was exactly where he wanted to be.